Hey everyone, this is What If Fan bringing you another part of What If Reborn in Naruto World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Please make sure to support the creator. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, a quick update, there's only one more part left in the story. What if Ichigo had a different Zanpakuto before we fully catch up with the author? So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be on this channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if sign-in system in high school DxD? What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if Mangaka in One Piece world? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next on the channel. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 11. What are you doing? The familiar voice of Sasuke asked. Daiki would have loved to answer. Sadly, he could not, because he was currently being crushed under the scaly foot of a huge 50-foot, pink-scaled chameleon. He is trying and failing to live up to the name of a chameleon summoner. Toka, the youngest daughter of Shiromari, helpfully supplied. His sensory abilities are atrocious, much worse than our last summoner, I'm told. That hurt, right in the pride. And that's why he's wearing a blindfold, he heard Sasuke ask, deadpan. Or maybe he was just asking normal. That was kind of normal for him, to be honest. Indeed, though it looks like our training has been cut short for the day with your arrival, Toka hummed. Let us resume another day then, Daiki-san. He heard the familiar sound of smoke puffing, and then the weight squishing him into the dirt disappeared utterly. Sighing in annoyance, Daiki sat up in the crater his body had made in the ground, and reached up to pull off the blindfold he was wearing. Having fun? Sasuke asked, all raised eyebrows and amused smirk on his face. Nope, he answered dryly and pushed himself up, shaking off the ache in his bones. Ever since I showed I had enough chakra now to summon the boss, he assigned me to his daughter and has had her coming around every day for the past few weeks for a few hours to help me train my sensing abilities. He'd found that as far as chakra units went, it cost a total of 25,000 to summon Shiromari, more than half his current full capacity. Oh well, at least he'd been accepted by the clan now. He didn't know how, but they had been watching him, and Shiromari had declared that him giving up the chance to have another powerful summoning clan at his beck and call showed how loyal of a person he was, worthy of the clan. And immediately declared right after that he was also an embarrassment with how poor his sensory abilities were. The dick. How the hell did he even have kids if he'd spent the last 50 years stuck as a castle? And how is that going for you? Sasuke asked, smirk growing, tauntingly. He knew it wasn't going well at all. You could take the Uchiha out of the prick, but you could never remove the prick from an Uchiha. Whatever the hell that meant. I'd love to see you try to sense someone that could remove all sound they make, turn pretty much invisible and remove their scent as well, then fight them blindfolded, Daiki snorted. So what brings you here? Back for another ass kicking? That removed the smirk from his face right quick. No, I'm not here to toss you around today, the other boy shrugged. Kakashi left us to solo train today, but Sakura was particularly clingy, so I gave her the slip at my place and came here since I knew you'd still be training here. I'm just about done for the day as well anyway, Daiki mused. I'm gonna hit up the shopping district. I need to up my weights again, and I've put off buying new weapons to replace the ones you destroyed. Beyond filling up his kitchen and shit to last him, for the last 20 days since he got back from the waterfall village, he'd thrown himself back into the grind. And not only because he needed to get stronger so what happened in Waterfall didn't happen again, but also because he had a bunch of new jutsu to get down in the meantime. He'd accomplished much in the last 20 days. Not only had he finished up learning the chakra flow technique, he'd also gotten down the wave emission technique from Fu. Granted, he'd only been able to transmit a few clipped words to her, while she could have an entire minute-long conversation in his head. But he was getting there. And she sure did love to talk. Every few hours she'd send him a transmission chattering about something. Her favorite topic so far was complaining about Rainmaru and how much of a prick he was. She was having a bit of trouble earning the fish's respect. But she was doing all right at least, which was of the good. And on top of that, it hadn't taken him long to get down the jutsu Kakashi had found on the body of that rain lady, whose name he didn't recall. And lucky for him, it was a nifty C-rank lightning jutsu. Lightning style, Elekiter. A single hand seal rather fast jutsu that generated a powerful electric current around the user's palms, used with a palm thrust. And worked very well with the force palm jutsu. It was incredible how coincidental it was he got a jutsu like that, and made him wonder idly if it was actually Kakashi just giving him it as a reward for being a dick, but in the end, Daiki didn't care. Beyond Sasuke coming to spar him with, he hadn't saw much of anyone else. Hinata popped by twice, but only stayed for a little while, because her team was running quite a lot of missions lately, and Tenten only once, the day after he got back, because her sensei apparently wanted to take their whole team on a month-long training trip outside the village. Probably in preparation for the Chunin exams. The time to himself had done wonders for his overall abilities though, that was for sure. Name, Daiki Uriai. Age, 13. Chakra capacity, 49, 200/49, 200, Jonin. Strength, 110/510. Endurance, 160/510. Durability, 110/510. Agility, 110 of 510. Taijutsu, 175/500. Ninjutsu, 195/500. Genjutsu, 10/500. Bokijutsu, 75/500. Chakra control, 195 to 500. Chakra affinities. Lightning, adept, you have stepped onto the path of roaring thunder. Fuinjutsu, journeyman the world breathes. He honestly had no idea what to think of his Fuinjutsu stat, to be honest. He'd spend hours every day poring over the copy of the four-symbol seal, learning every little bit of it he could, and when he finally came to fully understand it just 2 days ago, his Fuinjutsu had rose from adept to journeyman. And seriously, what was up with that cryptic bullshit? The world breathes, like, okay? But why though? It seriously felt like the system was just spouting random gibberish to mess with him. At least my chakra capacity has reached Jonin tier, he sighed inwardly. Thankfully, there was no elite Chunin tier. Planning on going on a mission? Sasuke asked. Something like that. Daiki shrugged. Now that he had the four-symbol seal and could inscribe it fluently, he was planning on putting his plan to the test. Alright, let's go then, Sasuke shrugged. I need to buy a few more demon windmill shuriken anyway. What's with your obsession with those, by the way? Daiki found himself asking as the pair of them left the training ground behind and headed out back into the village towards the shopping district. In the end, he would see the most growth if he went after Ichigo early. He had a limited time frame to do it in either way, and he doubted he'd get strong enough for the endgame if he didn't do it early. Besides, he also doubted he'd be strong enough to beat Ichigo down and force him either way, so the only option left was convincing him. Which could be a problem, considering he was hiding at the bottom of a massive lake and Daiki didn't fancy his chances in jumping in and swimming down to him. Seriously, meet the Leviathan in the depths? No thank you. Thankfully, Fu had solved that issue for him, else he would have had to sit at the edge of the lake and shout the Bija's name over and over and hope he drew its attention. The only way he had of making this happen was letting Ichigo know what was going to happen in the future roughly, and then convincing the Bija to become his partner so they could become strong enough together to deal with what was coming. He knew for a fact Ichigo definitely did not want to become a part of the Jubi again. And if he did join willingly, well, a willing Biju meant he would have instant access. And with Ichigo backing him up, he could deal with Raiga and Ranmaru, and then while he was at it, he could bomb rush the village of artisans who were also in the land of rivers. Those guys who at the end of part 1, went after Gaara with a bunch of incredibly powerful chakra weapons like those soaring short swords that let the chick using them outwin Jutsu Temari, and used Shikaka's chakra drawn from Gaara, to revive their dead leader. And it all came together with that. Raiga teaming up with them to revive that leader, using Ranmaru's eyes to capture Ichigo, in return for them turning the Kiba blades into super weapons far beyond what they were currently using the Biju's power as well. In one fell swoop, he would become a Jinchuriki, have full access to the power of a Biju, gain a pair of incredibly powerful Dojutsu eyes, one of the legendary sets of swords from the mist and a bunch of other powerful chakra weapons. It was the perfect plan. Walking beside Sasuke, Daiki's lips twisted into a massive grin. The next morning, Daiki made his way to the Hokage Tower, a confident gait in his steps. It was time after all. He'd cut his training off entirely after shopping with Sasuke and getting something to eat together, though the weirdo had bought a whole platter of tomatoes to eat at a restaurant. Who did that? He'd splurged a lot yesterday, spending a full 100,000 Ryo on stocking up his Dimension Force seal with kunai and shuriken. 200 of each to be precise. Thankfully, he wasn't lacking in money right now. Even after spending that much, he still had over 1.5 million Ryo to his name. Not only because of the bounties he got, but because every day since he got back, he'd been sending a clone off to do a D-rank mission, upping his mission record nicely. Shadow clones were so useful. Ah, Daiki-kun. The Sandaime greeted him as he entered the mission assignment room. Good to see you. Not sending a clone this time, he smiled knowingly. As expected of the Hokage. No, not this time, Hokage-sama, Daiki chuckled. I'm hoping to go on a C-rank mission today, preferably one to somewhere I've not been before. I want to see more of outside the village. Is that so? The Hokage mused. There are many beautiful places out there, but I'm afraid it will still have to be a mission around the general area, not too far from our territory. You're not quite ready to head out into fully hostile areas yourself. That's fine, I know my limits, Daiki shrugged. Have you got any missions into the Land of Rivers, or somewhere around there? They're not far, and there's apparently lots of beautiful lakes and stuff there. They do indeed, Daiki-kun, a splendid place to go fishing as well. You can find some lovely bass there. The Sandaime stroked his chin. I do believe we have one mission there now that I think about it, to the Land of Artisans actually. It's a general mission that comes in every few months. They want us to deliver a small shipment of specific ore that can only be found here in Fire Country. You should be able to handle that without much trouble. Daiki had to fight to stop the massive smile from spreading across his face. I'll take it, he agreed instantly. I've wanted to visit that place for a while actually, to see about maybe getting my hands on a good chakra weapon. You and many others, the older man laughed lightly. I dare say you've saved up enough over the past month though to get your hands on a decent one, so I wish you luck on your hunt. Thank you. Daiki replied simply, accepting the words humbly. After all, he would take all the luck he could get to help him with what he was planning on doing. You know, Daiki actually had to hand it to Isabu. If the giant turtle bijou was actually where he thought it was. If he was, the three-tailed bijou was literally chilling out in a lake, dead center between two of the main 5 hidden villages, the Leaf and the Sand. And not a single person had found out about it being there. Again, that's only if he's here. Daiki mused. Currently, he found himself atop a large cliffside pier that stretched out a bit over the humongous lake. It hadn't taken him any longer than a dozen or so hours to reach here. He was a bit tired, but he could easily keep going. It was hard to even make the lake out below him. The second he entered the general vicinity of the lake, he found that there was a massive fog barrier everywhere, stretching out as far as the eye could see. Which granted wasn't very far because of said fog, but Daiki was sure it covered the entire lake for the most part. With his suspicions of who was in this lake, that sent alarm bells ringing in the back of his head. Isabu can create an illusionary mist after all, and has water techniques. Who's to say he can't use the hidden mist jutsu as well? He's been with the mist village for decades, he thought to himself, arms crossed. And who else but a bijou would be able to sustain such a massive fog for any long period of time? Well, if his suspicions were right and this fog was created by a jutsu, that was. Alright, I can do this, he hyped himself up. There was a tremor in his legs that he was doing his very best to ignore. Because plan or not, this was a motherfucking bijou he was going to attempt to reason with. It was for that reason specifically that he had a clone waiting in the tree line, waiting to use the replacement technique with him if the negotiations at all went awry. If Isabu attacked him, he was booking it back to Konoha and informing the Hokage that he found the 3 tails while touring one of the lakes on his way to the village of artisans. Either way, he was going to fuck the Akatsuki over, and he would offer himself up as a Jinchuriki for Isabu if the Sandaime decided to seal the Sanbai. He'd just have to put Raiga and Ranmaru off until later in that case. Still, it was a bijou. Daiki slapped his cheeks. Don't pussy out, he told himself before hesitation could settle in fully. The strength he'd earned through the grind would see him through, one way or another. Daiki made a single hand seal and focused his chakra, before extending both hands outwards towards the lake. From his hands, rippling waves of sound began to emanate down towards the lake. The wave transmission jutsu was an interesting thing. One had to know the specific chakra frequency of someone if they were trying to send a message to them alone. But, if not set to any frequency, the technique transferred the message to every living thing within the vicinity of the sound waves. Which was what he did, to make sure Ichigo got the message. A simple message, 5 words, repeated over and over. Ichigo, I've come to bargain. He transmitted the message over and over. Thankfully for Daiki, the lake, while massive, wasn't anything compared to the distance between the leaf and waterfall villages, and so, he didn't need to expend anywhere near the amount of chakra for this as he did when trying to send messages to Fu. He expected he would be here for a while. After all, he was sure Ichigo, if he was here, would hear the message, and have to process the fact that somebody out there knew his name that should only be known to his siblings and the Sage of Six Paths, then take the time to contemplate if this was a trap or... A massive resounding splash of water shot through the air. Nay, calling it a splash of water did it no justice at all. It was like a gargantuan geyser that could pulverize a mountain suddenly just shot up from the depths of the lake and roared up into the heavens, piercing up through the clouds themselves. Or so he assumed, since he couldn't actually see that far up with the fog and all. And from within the massive geyser, a huge, titanic shadow seemed to seep up through it and become visible even through the fog. A split moment later, the fog and geyser both seemed to dissipate almost instantly, and Daiki's mouth hung low as he stared up into a terrifying, gleaming yellow and red eye surrounded by concentrated rings, almost akin to the Rinnegan in aesthetics. Easily as large as Shiromori, if not larger, the huge head of the Sanbai stared down at him, its single eye pinning him in place with the sheer weight its mere presence exuded. Holy shit, this was a bad idea. For a moment, neither spoke. Daiki because he couldn't actually muster the willpower to at the moment, and Ichigo because the giant shelled bijou seemed to be examining him. The one to break the silence was the turtle. Human, how do you know my name? Ichigo spoke. The bijou's voice was distinctly male, with a calm bass timbre to it. It echoed powerfully, yet was not booming. Daiki opened and closed his mouth, floundering for a moment, before gritting his teeth. What was the point of being one with the grind if he was going to bitch out at a critical moment like this? Through some bad luck that worked out well for me, Daiki soldiered on. I'll be blunt, you and your siblings, the other bijou, are in danger. The only reaction Ichigo gave to his words was one single, slow, languished blink. Is that so? The bijou responded simply. And how does this change anything? We are always in danger. You humans are always chasing us, sealing us away for your own benefit. The fact you know I am here is a threat in of itself to me. Well, he wasn't wrong. You're not wrong, Daiki said as such, but this goes beyond even that. I'll be straight with you, big guy. I've saw the future and what's going to happen in the next few years. It isn't pretty. I came looking for you because I need your help and you need mine. Not an unheard of power. Ichigo inclined his head slightly in a nod, but tell me, how does this pertain to a danger to me? A few years, a few decades, it makes little difference to me. Another Shinobi war perhaps? Shall I be caught and sealed again? You're remarkably blasé about the thought of being sealed inside a Jinchuriki again, he couldn't help but point out. Ichigo tilted his head to the side slightly. Should I not be? He asked. In the end, whatever human I'm sealed into will die at some point, and I'll be sealed again, or get a chance to escape. Either way, humans come and go, but we bijou always come back. Daiki grimaced. Yeah, that's kind of the thing, he began. If things don't go in a specific way in the future, which only happens because of a lot of luck, none of you will come back. All that will remain of you is the Jubi. Ichigo's one single eye that had been gazing down at him calmly, almost boredly, flew wide open in shock. What? How? That is impossible. Ichigo's cool was completely lost. Daiki swallowed. Even just a narrow of this guy's eye was terrifying. No killing intent needed, not if someone like Madara Uchiha has the Rinnegan and can summon the Geto Mazo, he refuted. Ichigo froze completely. The Rinnegan, just like father. The huge shelled bijou trembled in place, and Daiki bore witness to his trio of enormous armored tails jerking back and forth in the water in clear agitation. Such a simple gesture, creating thick roiling waves in the lake's surface. Madara Uchiha passed on his Rinnegan when he died to an Uzumaki child to use as a pawn and has had a subordinate manipulating things in the background. Daiki pushed on. You should know him well. He was mind-controlling your former host, Yagura. Yes, him, I remember him, but why? I don't understand what the point of that was now that you have told me this, Ichigo murmured, confused. If their plan is to bring back the Jubi, why not just capture me then? To cause chaos, Daiki answered. They're pitting the villages against each other, while creating an organization of S-rank shinobi, all for the purpose of capturing all of your siblings, and well, that guy has a specific grudge against you in particular. I see, Isabu replied simply, seemingly deep in thought, but why does he have a grudge against me? Because he was in love with your Jinchuriki before Yagura, Daiki said bluntly, the girl you were forced into, a former kunoichi of Konoha or dash. Rin, yes, I remember, Isabu sighed, single eye closing. I see, I understand. There is only 2 questions I must ask of you. I'll answer if I can. Daiki shrugged. He found himself becoming much more comfortable talking to the bijou as time went on. He just had to grind through the conversation and adapt to the presence of the terrifyingly powerful giant turtle, that was all. Why does Madara Uchiha want to reform the Jubi? Isabu asked. It is an ancient, mindless beast that's only purpose in life is destroying all in its way. Daiki shrugged. He wants to be the new sage of 6 paths, he answered. He thinks with the Rinnegan and being the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, he'll reach the same level as the original sage of 6 paths. A shuddering breath exhaled through the guard over Isabu's mouth. How foolish, what a contemptible man, the bijou spat, the first hint of anything rude leaving his mouth at all, before the giant turtle sighed and met Daiki's eyes again. Very well, my final question, why did you seek me out to tell me this? What do you mean by you need my help? Daiki winced. Yeah, that's the part you're not gonna like, he sighed, before shrugging and chugging along. There's nowhere you can hide, not even your personal little dimension thing. The guy who controlled Yagura has a space-time ninjutsu that lets him break into things like that as well. So you even know about that ability of mine? I see. Isabu mused, but said nothing else, letting Daiki continued. He took a deep breath, and decided to just put it out there, like ripping off a band-aid. I'm planning on doing everything I can to get strong enough to beat them and make sure they can't revive the Jubi, he put out there, then narrowed his eyes at Isabu and made sure the bijou made sure he was being absolutely serious. To that end, I want to become your Jinchuriki. No, not just a simple Jinchuriki. The only way this will work is if you willingly join me and ally with me, allowing me to become a perfect Jinchuriki. Isabu said nothing and silence echoed between them. Daiki crossed his arms and held the bijou's gaze. I have more options I can pursue to getting stronger, but becoming a Jinchuriki will speed up my training immensely, he stated, but there's a not small chance I will die before I ever get strong enough to make a difference. With your strength backing me up, I can immediately go after something else I want, that will allow me to cloak my chakra completely, making it so none can ever tell I would be a Jinchuriki in the first place, even if. Madara stood right next to me and stared at me with the Rinnegan. For all the abilities Ranmaru's eyes had, the one that Daiki most wanted, was the ability to cloak the user's chakra signature so thoroughly not even the Byakugan could see through it at point-blank range. With those eyes, not a single person would be able to tell he was a Jinchuriki, unless he used Isabu's chakra right in front of them. Finally, Isabu spoke. You speak quite confidently of your plans, the bijou hummed, but, you realize what is needed for you to become a perfect Jinchuriki? A full partnership between us would mean nothing blocking my access from you. The only purpose of a seal would be to hold me, not block me from leaving. The implications there were heavy. He would have to be willing to trust Isabu with his life. I'm not a little bitch Isabu, and I don't plan on leaving my fate and the fate of the world on the prophecy boy said to save the world and bring peace and all that nonsense. It's hard to when you've grown up beside the idiot, Daiki smirked, and I wasn't sure if he even did win in the end. I didn't see that far. And with the enemies that are coming, so strong they make the ruling Kaige look like wet behind the ears genin, I need all the strength I can get. Without you, that's the best I'll amount to. Daiki uncrossed his arms and thrust a hand out to point up at the towering bijou whose head hovered over 50 feet above him. Despite him being atop a cliff that was over 250 feet high, I'll put my life in your hands and go right down this path with you at my side, he declared, and together, if my plans work out nicely, we'll get strong enough through the grind to be able to slap that pansy-ass Jubi around even if it did get revived. Isabu gave him a languid stare. You're an odd little human, aren't you? At least I don't rap, Daiki snorted. Your brother Gyuki has to deal with that. Isabu shook his massive head. It's been a long time since I spoke with a human that did not consider me a monster, the giant mused, almost nostalgically, before looking Daiki in the eye. Very well, what you speak of is far too private knowledge for you to have just come across it, especially with how easily you speak our names. I'll lend you my aid. Now tell me, human, you know my name, but what is yours? Daiki jabbed a finger against his chest. The name is Daiki Yurei, it means shining spirit, a name fit for a guy like me in my dedication to the grind. He boldly introduced himself. Pleasure to have you on board, buddy. Daiki, a good name indeed, Isabu nodded, but, are you not forgetting something? No, I don't think so, Daiki blinked. What do you mean? He asked, confused. Isabu sighed, a bit too gung-ho perhaps, he mused. What I mean is, how do you plan on sealing me inside you? You seem to have come alone after all. Oh, I've already taken care of that, Daiki shrugged the question off, reaching down and grasping his shirt at the base, before pulling it up and over his head, leaving his muscular torso bare, and exposing the 4 rectangular black ink blocks, spread about each corner leading to the center of his chest. I've already learned a strong enough seal to hold you, so you ready? He was eager and excited to get this show on the road. Isabu blinked. You are skilled in the sealing arts? Enough to seal one such as I at your age? Interesting, Isabu hummed, before chuckling. Very well, show me your skill, Daiki, I am ready. Alright, brace yourself then. Daiki warned, bringing his hands up and clasping them into a ram seal, focusing his chakra and flowing it through the seal on his chest. Sealing characters spread out from the tops of the ink blocks, forming a spiderweb-like pattern on the center of his chest, just like Fu, before suddenly, lighting up brightly with chakra, and the characters began to form up and out of his chest, reaching into the thin air in the dozens, forming what looked like inky black chains made of up-conjoined sealing symbols and lashing out through the air like striking serpents, growing and expanding to massive sizes. They wrapped around the massive bijou a moment later, and despite Isabu's epic size, the turtle was lifted up into the air as if he were a feather. Though, of course, Daiki only knew it happened like this, because Isabu allowed it. If he wanted, he could break free from these Fuinjutsu chains as easy as breathing. Isabu was dragged through the hair headfirst, making contact with Daiki, and moments later, submerging into the seal inscribed on his chest. As soon as Isabu disappeared completely, Daiki felt something click into place and a connection form between the seal and his chakra network, and he collapsed on his backside, panting in exhaustion. Shit, that used up a ton of chakra. He gasped, and realized he was sweating quite intensely. Chapter 12. While he was incredibly low on chakra from the ceiling, Daiki thankfully had a backup plan that could work as a tip-me-up. The clone he had created to switch with him in case things went south. By dispelling it, he regained a full half of his total chakra capacity. Ah, that's better, he groaned in relief. He just sat there for a moment, before erupting into stunned laughter. This was insane, he couldn't believe it had actually all worked out for him. Sure, he'd hyped himself up and told himself it would all work out. But, there was that prickle of doubt that ate away at his thoughts at the back of his mind. And odd as it was, even though he'd just sealed the sand by himself into his chest, Daiki didn't really feel anything different. Like, since it was completely new to him, he could feel the connection between himself, his chakra, and the contents of within the seal on his chest, but beyond that, he didn't really feel all that different. Actually, wait. As he focused on his chakra, he noticed. It felt a bit different. In a way he couldn't really describe. Not stronger in any way, and, it's regenerating quicker already, he realized with a start as he focused on it. That was good, really good actually. He hadn't really had a frame of reference beyond Obito and Madara becoming Jinchuriki to guess on how long it would be before the benefits package of being a Jinchuriki showed up. It would usually take longer than this actually, the voice of Isabu suddenly echoed in his mind, making Daiki jump with a yelp. I'm used to this now though, so I know how it works, I'm just actively helping you. Oh, well that made sense he supposed. Thanks, he thought back, focusing on the seal. Don't mention it, I'm just doing as I agreed, Isabu replied. I have to admit, it's a lot more roomy in here than the last few I was in, this is good work. Though, we really need to work on your chakra capacity, it's quite shallow isn't it? Ouch, his pride. He'd actually been particularly proud of reaching the chakra levels of a Jonin. Well, either way, he wouldn't be long in increasing his chakra capacity massively. Not only because of Bijou, but also because of the eyes he planned on getting his hands on, or, rather, his eye sockets on, in. Holding? Moving on. Not only would Isabu be making his chakra capacity grow, the constant drain from the eyes would basically amount to constantly using his chakra at least a little bit, which would immediately be topped up by Aisabu regenerating his chakra at a much faster rate. Between the two of them alone, his chakra capacity would increase massively, rapidly. And that was without actually factoring in his training, which would be massively increased due to, again, the presence of Aisabu. I see, these eyes do indeed look useful for more even than just their innate abilities. Aisabu chimed in, it seems you have everything planned out on how to get stronger. Well, beyond finding training material, pure physical might only go so far, as you can probably tell by my siblings and I. He hadn't explained them yet to Aisabu. Can you see my memories? He asked, interested and at the same time not sure what kind of reaction he'd have to the fact that he was a fusion of two people, one from another world entirely. Yes, I can see your memories, quite easily. You kept much of this seal open, remember? You designed it after all, you have given me full access, Aisabu replied. As for this other world business, trust me when I say, I have seen much weirder. I have even been to hell once. Oh yeah, hell did exist in this place, didn't it? The Sound 4 tried to drag in Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba and Niji with them if you remembered right during one of the anime arcs, right? And there were actual demons from hell from the movies, like the one with that hot priestess that wanted Naruto's kid. That did bring up a question. What the hell even were the Rashomon summons? Hashirama could summon them, as could Orochimaru in one of the Sound 4, the one with the faggy lipstick. They're creatures from hell actually, Aisabu helpfully supplied. They escaped sometime in the past, quite annoying fellows. I believe the Uzumaki clan dealt with them by sealing them into doors. Interesting. Also amusing that Hashirama Senju literally had a contract with what amounted to doors possessed by demons. Also, funny, the Uzumaki clan just didn't give a shit, man. Aisabu snorted. Resisting the urge to laugh in amusement, Daiki changed the subject. So you've got a look at my plans then, he asked. Yes, Raiga Kurosaki and this Ranmaru boy, Aisabu hummed, they shouldn't be a problem. Well, that was good to know, really good to know. He more was thinking about the fact that he was going to be killing a child and taking his eyes to get stronger. He'd long since come to terms with the fact that he would be doing it and comforted himself with the fact that Ranmaru may have pulled a heel-face turn in the end, but he in the beginning was all too happy to help Raiga murder innocents. You are a child as well, you understand? Aisabu pointed out, killing is killing in the end, no matter the age of the victim. And I have killed much younger children before. Just 100 years ago, children not even half this boy's age were fighting on the battlefield, killing, looting. Scores of youngster humans have attacked me, I killed them all the same. Daiki nodded, he quite agreed actually. He said nothing more and let the topic drop with that. He moved on. Right, then will it be alright to try out using your chakra right now then, he asked. I want to get a feel for it. That should be fine, I've got a feel for the signature of your chakra to match mine to it. Aisabu agreed. A second later, he felt a massive surge of chakra spread out from the seal into his chakra coils, and his vision was tinted red as thick, tangible chakra began to bubble out of his tenketsu forming into a roiling cloak, a single thick and heavy shrimp-like tail forming behind him. Strength suffused Daiki, almost the same way it had when he drank the hero water. This isn't bad at all. Daiki grinned, clenched and unclenching his hands, watching the chakra bubble around him. And it was just so easy to control. It moved according to his thoughts, as if it were another limb he'd just gained. He looked over his shoulder and his grin widened as he wiggled the thick energy tail he'd gained back and forth. He didn't feel quite as strong as he did when he had taken the hero water, but he was a hell a lot stronger right now than he was in his normal base form. As soon as he thought that, he felt even more chakra exude from the seal on his chest, and he felt as his power spiked massively. Two more thick shrimp-like tails bubbled into existence, forming on his back. Holy shit! Daiki gaped at himself, feeling how strong he'd become from this. Insane, how insane! His strength now felt like it put his power with the hero water to shame. Yeah, with this, I'm sure I can deal with Raiga. Daiki laughed. He punched out his arm, trying something out, and watched with glee as the chakra around his arm extended outwards into a gargantuan red chakra claw that stretched for hundreds of feet in the blink of an eye, the claw so large it could grasp a bus within its palm and crush it in a blink. If this was how powerful he felt with just the basic chakra cloak, he wondered exactly how powerful he'd be assuming the version 2 chakra cloak, or even, how strong he'd be going full Bijou mode and assuming Aisabu's form. I really want to fire off a Bijudama, he thought excitedly. As soon as he did, the chakra flow was cut off and he felt himself weaken drastically to his weak base self. He instantly missed the feeling of unstoppable strength he felt before. Calm down, don't go getting a power high from just that much, Isabu huffed. Besides, if you fire off a Bijudama you'll alert anyone within 1,000 miles of what's happening and your plans will be ruined, remember, the giant turtle helpfully reminded him. Oh yeah, he didn't want anybody knowing about his new status as a Jinchuriki, it was supposed to be a secret after all. I have to finish this mission already and get back to the grind. Daiki bit his lip. He wanted to feel that power, without doping on something like the hero water or borrowing someone else's power. Besides, if Isabu's full power alone was enough to handle all of his problems, they wouldn't be in the situation they currently were. He had to remind himself, Isabu was his ally, not a crutch. You really are a weird kid, Isabu laughed lightly. Don't worry, you'll have plenty to work on. I'll coach you on how to use my abilities beyond just my chakra, like my coral style, and if you really want to cut loose that badly, you can always use my space-time ninjutsu and hide out in my dimension and go wild once you have it down as well. Ah, Isabu was the best bijou. Screw Kurama, Naruto could keep that testy fox. Isabu chuckled again. Kurama isn't that bad. Sometimes, while he lightens up apparently to this Naruto kid, the turtle bijou tried and failed to defend his brother. Well, not that Daiki was saying Kurama wasn't cool, he was an utter badass, no doubt about that. Isabu was just better, turtle power over fox power all the way. Isabu's amusement was palpable, but he said nothing else on the subject. Probably to be chill and respect his brother. Putting that out of mind for the moment, Daiki felt fully topped up now after having a hit of Isabu's chakra. It was about time to get a move on and head for the Katabami gold mine and get those eyes and sparky swords. First though, he wanted to check out his status, so he called it up. The fuck, he stopped and stared. That wasn't right, and that didn't make sense? Name, Daiki Uriai. Age, 13. Chakra capacity, 49,500/49,500, Jonin. Strength, 110/. Endurance, 160/. Durability, 110/. Agility, 110/. Taijutsu, 175/500. Ninjutsu, 195/500. Genjutsu, 10/500. Bokijutsu, 75/500. Chakra control, 196 out of 500. Chakra affinities. Lightning, adept, you have stepped onto the path of roaring thunder. Water, novice, you have no training with this element. Fuinjutsu, journeyman, the world breathes. His stat caps, at least for his physical abilities, had all turned into question marks? How the hell did that make sense? So this is the game system you can see. Interesting. I cannot see it through your eyes, but only through your memories as they register. How peculiar, Isabu spoke, interest in his voice. It seems you have inherited my water affinity as my Jinchuriki as expected. As for the new changes, perhaps this system of yours cannot determine a physical limit for you? That made sense, he supposed, but anything he'd seen like this before was usually from some incredibly powerful entity. How could it not measure his limit? Maybe this system isn't as special as you think it is? Isabu supplied, from my point of view, it hasn't really given you anything beyond a screen to see your progress as you trained. Beyond motivation in fusing your souls together, it seems to provide no other benefits. Once again, he wasn't wrong. Then just what the hell was this thing in the end? Perhaps some form of bloodline mutation? Isabu mused. Bloodlines interacting with the subconscious aren't unheard of, nor ones interacting with spacetime and dimensions either. I've seen all manner of bloodlines over my lifetime, this would hardly be a groundbreaking one. When you put it like that. The thing about Isabu's abilities was that they were natural and innate to him. Almost like a bloodline limit, to perfectly honest. Using them was incredibly simple, as long as he had access to Isabu's chakra. Of course, it helped a lot that Isabu was very willing to show him how to use it. As in, their minds were utterly linked, and they could switch position on who was in control and who wasn't. So learning how to use Aisabu's abilities was as simple as giving him free control over his body for a brief time and having the Bijou use his abilities through Daiki's body and showing him how it was done. He almost felt like an Uchiha for a brief time with how easily he picked up a bunch of new jutsu just by literally having a big old turtle use said jutsu through him and copying how it was done. It was a bit weird to find himself standing a massive dimly lit void beside Aisabu's huge body, the only light being a small lake of chakra that Aisabu claimed was Daiki's own. And then griped about it being too shallow for him to submerge his body in and swim around in. Daiki vowed to have a chakra capacity so large in the future that even Naruto would weep in envy. The only downside to all this, I suppose, is if I ever lose you, I'll lose access to your abilities as well. Daiki mused, perched over the top of a cliffside, overlooking a small mining village. It had only taken him a few hours to get here, and he barely felt winded at all. Actually, he felt full of energy. Jinchuriki's stamina was great, and he'd only gotten the very beginnings of it. Even as he ran his way over, he could feel as Aisabu fed his chakra into Daiki's own and force it to grow bit by bit. It wasn't expanding massively, only increasing by what amounted to a fraction of the total amount he actually had, but it was a constant thing and it piled up. You'll have much worse things to worry about than losing just my abilities if that happens, Aisabu deadpanned, like being dead for one. Maybe, Daiki nodded, though that just meant he had failed in the great grind that was his life, but I think if I grab a piece of the stone of Jello, I could survive it. It granted so much longevity one could appear almost immortal. After all, a little mundane ferret that had eaten a small piece had been alive for multiple hundreds of years. That kind of longevity would even put Kushina's to shame, and she would have survived the extraction of Kurama if she had gotten treatment quickly, or not got gored through the stomach by one of the literal mountain-sized Bijou's claws. Speaking of Kurama though. Hey, can I eat some of you? Daiki asked. That's what those gold and silver guys from Kumo did to your brother, and they got to keep a bunch of his chakra despite not even being Jinchuriki. If they could do it, why not him? What? No. Aisabu outright sputtered, losing his composure utterly. What is wrong with you, Daiki? Do you like power that much? Just make a separate seal with my chakra in it. I'm not letting you devour my flesh just so you can keep my abilities, you weirdo. Well, it wasn't like Aisabu couldn't regenerate it, so what was the harm? You've gotten a healing factor yourself now, why not let some tiny creature chew on your insides then get back to me? Aisabu deadpanned. I'm good. Daiki decided to drop the issue. Well, those gold and silver brothers were lame anyway with their obsession with gold and silver medals. He supposed he could just copy what was done to that Sora kid in that one filler arc who had a bunch of Kurama's chakra sealed in him. Yes, you do that. Aisabu agreed. Oh well, it was just a thought. The grind never waited and never ended. And he had plenty more to work on once he got back to Konoha as well. A whole slew of water ninjutsu to go about learning. Courtesy of Aisabu. Or well, rather, Yagura. It was too bad that he couldn't just use the jutsu himself through Daiki's body like with his own innate abilities, but not everyone was perfect, not even a super kaiju turtle. I've never had to use hand seals before, he could see Aisabu shrug in his mind's eyes, nor have I got any training in actual ninjutsu. I can show you the jutsu he used, the hand seals for them and how he trained, but you'll have to puzzle out the rest yourself. And that was perfectly okay with Daiki. He was already feeling yucky deep in his balls that he was getting so much without having to go through the grind. Being able to suddenly use all the jutsu of a real proper Kage would be just far too convenient. Also, the grind had been kind to him. Your love of training aside, Aisabu spoke dryly, perhaps get your head in the game? It's about time to jump into action, is it not? Indeed, he was perched atop a cliffside, a few hundred feet above the mining area of the town, specifically perched directly above a large building that probably once belonged to the leader of this settlement before Raiga came in, killed him and took over. He knew it was where his targets were, because of all the thugs dressed in black cloaks guarding the perimeter. They probably already know I'm here. Daiki mused. If the boy Ranmaru isn't asleep, then yes, they're probably waiting to see what kind of move you make before retaliating. Aisabu agreed. The smart move, with an enemy all clustered together like that, would be to bombard them with ninjutsu. The problem was, while he was sure he could do that and kill Raiga if he wasn't fast enough with Aisabu's power, that left the risk of damaging Ranmaru's eyes. Honestly, the only threat was Raiga himself. The thugs he'd recruited were all civilians he forced to work for him and trained himself. Training by a powerful jonin or not, shinobi training wasn't that simple that one could reach what it took to be even a genin without building a proper foundation first, and unless your name was Itachi Uchiha or Kakashi Hatake, that foundation took years to build. They wouldn't be an issue to get through. So attacking head-on was his best bet. Go for the kill instantly, Aisabu told him. I do not remember much of Raiga personally, but I do remember the Kiba blades. They are incredibly powerful and will pierce even through my chakra. As soon as he said so, Daiki felt the familiar feeling of raw, unadulterated power surge in his veins, thick red bubbles of chakra oozing out of his tenketsu and forming a cloak around him, three tails immediately forming behind him. As soon as the three-tailed, version 1 chakra cloak formed over him, Daiki moved, erupting down with a shunshin propelling his enhanced speed to even crazier degrees. The cliffside he was perched atop shattered completely from the sheer force and speed of his takeoff, and the world blurred around him. He slammed into and through the room of the building, tearing its foundations apart and the impact of his landing shaking the earth beneath him like a rumbling earthquake. In but a split few seconds, the large building had been turned into a pile of debris. Daiki heard many a scream of shock and fear, but ignored them, his brown eyes, replaced with the eyes of Aisabu, a demonic-looking glare, a yellow-ringed iris, on a purple-ringed backdrop, whipped around back and forth, looking for his target. A moment later, a pile of the debris shattered apart and a large, tan man with long greasy black hair erupted into the air, landing on the side of the cliff above him, glaring down. Over his shoulder, there was black bag, almost like a cocoon in shape and looks. So it was a Jinchuriki, the man spat as he eyed Daiki, levying a pair of slim, double-edged blades, each with an upward curved bladed prong, akin to a monstrous fang near the tip of one side of the blade and another one near the base of the blade's other side. And would you look at that, those are some familiar eyes. Have you been sent to hunt me down for the misty baby demon? Daiki didn't bother answer, he focused on his back for a moment, piercing his three tails into the ground behind him, before thrusting both hands out firing out a pair of massive chakra claws through the air towards the man. As if, the man laughed, his twin blades erupting into incredibly powerful and bright crackling electricity and slashed it with both blades. From the blades, erupted a pair of huge slashes of lightning that cut straight through the chakra claws, before leaping after them with a shunshin towards Daiki. Damn, Aisabu wasn't kidding. He was already prepared for this though. From his still raised hands, Daiki fired a pair of force palm jutsus, the pair of shockwaves that tore through the fangs of lightning approaching him. Then erupted up in a blur of speed. Raiga was fast no doubt, he couldn't compare to his own speed backed by his current form. His fist found purchase in Raiga's stomach a second later, and the man gagged, eyes widening in pain as he contorted around his fist from the force of the blow, before a moment later, shooting back through the air from the direction he came from. Raiga, a young, boyish voice cried in terror from the bag on Raiga's shoulder. A red mist shimmered around Daiki, nearly instantly hiding his opponent from him. Too bad he expected this as well. The mountainside was pulled apart, his three chakra tails erupting from the side of it, exactly where Raiga had been standing before. And the former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen was quickly snatched up by two of his tails, while the third one grabbed the bag and ripped it from Raiga's shoulders, wrapping around the bag up to halfway. Then he squeezed with all the tails. All of them. Bone crunched under the sheer force exerted by the Sanbai's chakra tails, and he crushed everything below the head on the pair of them. See, Raiga was strong, stronger than Daiki no doubt, but he relied on a crutch to be relevant at all. As amazing as the Kiba blades were though, they just couldn't compare to a bijou. We both have crutches, mine is just better. Daiki mused, reeling his tails back to him, and holding the crushed corpses in the air in front of him. Daiki eyed them for a moment, before focusing, Suinpa he thought, focusing Aisabu's chakra. His body shimmered with shadows of black and salmon pink, before suddenly, he was no longer standing in the middle of the Katabami gold mine, and instead, found himself standing atop a huge marble pillar, with an inky black void sky. Well, he thought pillar, but really, it was a single massive landmass that stretched on and on and on for miles in every direction. It eerily reminded him of Obito's Kamui dimension, but slightly different. Suinpa, it meant dimension, it was the name of Aisabu's spacetime ability. It's slightly like Kamui. but only in the sense that it transported the user to this personal dimension of Isabu's. When he used it again to leave, it would transport him to the exact same place he was in before he entered the dimension. It wouldn't let him teleport around everywhere, and it definitely wouldn't let him do something as bullshit as keeping separate parts of his body in the dimension so he could be intangible and troll the shit out of everyone like Obito did. If only though, that would be amazingly funny. He banished the thought immediately. This wasn't exactly an amusing moment. With the corpses in the grip of his tails, Daiki lowered them gently to the ground, before allowing Isabu's chakra to dissipate and returning to normal. His eyes settled on the black bag. He could see a massive amount of blood seeping through it. Grimacing, Daiki looked away from it and at the pulped body of Raiga. It was a mess, the only thing properly intact being his head, his features twisted into agonizing pain that he probably felt for all of a split second before he died. A split second meant a hell of a lot more to a shinobi than it did to a civilian though. Daiki walked over to the corpse of the former Mist Shinobi and picked up the pair of blades stuck in what was the man's hands, now chunks of pulped meat. It was disgusting, but he pilfered the blades from the corpse, before instantly bringing one down and severing the head from the corpse and sealing it away in his Dimension Force seal. That done, Daiki ignored the corpses and focuses on the blades in his hands, lightly running his chakra through them, not even trying to turn his chakra into lightning. As soon as he did, sparks buzzed into existence before cladding it in a small crackling aura of lightning, easily on par with, if not stronger than his own chakra flow technique using his lightning. That's fucking insane. Daiki gaped. The swords themselves automatically transformed even normal chakra into lightning chakra. Just holding these could let any random scrub that could use chakra create lightning chakra on par with an expert in lightning elemental manipulation. Curious, he changed the flow of chakra he was channeling into lightning chakra itself and watched as the aura crackling around the swords ballooned in size massively. Yet, did not spark out of his control at all. It was so damn easy to control his lightning like this. It seemed, not only did these blades amplify the power of his lightning chakra, it also made it much easier to use and control. Yeah, it was no wonder these things were so highly regarded. If the other blades could at all compare to these, and he knew Samahata at least could and was better, then he could definitely understand Suigetsu's desire to collect them all. His examining done, Daiki cut off the flow of chakra to the blades, letting the aura of lightning around them fizzle out and then sealed them in his palms. Now to deal with you, he swallowed, turning to the black bag laying in the middle of a puddle of blood. He walked over to the bag and crouched over the head of it, hesitating for a brief moment, before grasping the zipper at the top and bringing it down. The face of a small boy, maybe around 9 years old, stared back at him, pale, aristocratic features, medium-length purple hair, and bright red eyes open wide in surprise. There was a reason he specifically aimed to kill Ranmaru while he was still in that bag. So he couldn't see the boy's face and hesitate. The boy probably didn't even feel any pain before he died, just had enough time to be confused and not register it, before his heart, organs, and everything else below his neck was destroyed. Sorry kid, no hard feelings. Daiki sighed, before holding his hand out and summoning a glass jar, placing it down beside him. It was empty, except for a light green fluid filling it up to near the brim. It was a special kind of liquid produced by the shinobi in the hospital, made with chakra and helped to keep cut-off limbs and other body parts fresh and revitalized. He didn't know after all, if his body would end up rejecting them. He doubted it, with how easy eyes got swapped about in this world, but it was always best to make sure, so he could swap his own eyes back in. He unscrewed the top of the jar, before breathing deeply and bringing his hands into a modified ox hand seal. Green chakra suffused his hands, before he brought one hand up and peeled his right eyelid completely open. Then placed 2 fingers of the other over his wide eye. He let the chakra seep in, examining his nerves and everything about his eye and the socket, numbing the pain receptors as best he could. Then he grit his teeth and pushed on, digging his 2 fingers into his eye socket and plucking. Chapter 13. How do your eyes feel? Isabu asked. A full half an hour had passed since he'd finished. It was, actually, a lot easier than he thought it was going to be. Though, that was partly due to Isabu's chakra than his own efforts. All he'd had to do was connect the nerves in his eye socket, and within minutes he was done. When you've been around as long as I have, it's simple to get a template of your body using my chakra, Isabu input, so, he prompted. Itchy. Daiki answered simply. He couldn't tell if that was because if the nerves were still a bit tender, or because of his new visual prowess. Even without trying to activate any of the abilities of his new eyes, his vision was still massively enhanced. Before, he had 20/20 vision, his eyes were pretty damn good already, and could see most things clearly for a good 40-50 feet before they started getting blurry at all. Now, if he focused, he could clearly see things and focus his vision on them, and see them as if he were standing right next to them, from hundreds of feet away, and the sheer scope of his vision, which had topped out before at a few miles as was normal for human eyes, could see over 10 miles away. He'd checked with a clone. That'll fade, I'm sure. From what I can feel of your chakra, there is no signs of rejection, Isabu mused. Now you just need to figure out how these abilities work. He didn't really have time to work on that himself, he had things to do after all, he still had a mission to complete. Thankfully, he had access to this handy-dandy little dimension and he could just leave a bunch of clones here to work on the abilities together and pass on the information to him by dispelling while he made his way to the village of artisans. About the clones, you realize you could have had one of them do the procedure, correct? Isabu asked. Yes, he did. He hadn't been thinking when he started though. He just wanted to get the eyes out and in his sockets, so he didn't have to look at the kid he murdered for his eyes any longer. Stupid of him, but already done and he couldn't change that. Also, you could have let me know, he pointed out. I didn't want to startle you when you were plucking your eyes. Isabu retorted. How annoying, why did he have to be so logical? It comes with thinking about things other than the grind. Isabu chuckled. As far as the eyes went, there was a constant drain from them now that they were connected to his chakra network and he couldn't deactivate their base passive form. But, it was honestly a minuscule amount and stopped whenever he shut his eyes and cut off his vision from seeing anything. Which he didn't even need to do because of Isabu, because his chakra regenerated far faster than the eyes drained. Their only passive power without focusing any more chakra into his eyes was enhanced vision, unlike the Sharingan that when active in the base, non-Manjikyu forms, had all abilities passively activated at once, which was probably why it was such a major chakra drain on Kakashi. It's a good thing, like you thought it would be. With my chakra mixing with yours and a constant strain, your paltry chakra capacity will indeed grow passively and quickly, Isabu hummed. Give it a few months and I may even be able to submerge myself in your chakra in here and go for a relaxing swim. Paltry. Again with the small chakra capacity jokes. No, it has nothing to do with your genitalia, I'm being literal. Isabu deadpanned. It still hurt his pride though. Shaking his head, Daiki pushed himself up from where he was resting on the marble ground and stood up. It was about time to get a move on. His eyes drifted over to the corpses of Raiga and Ranmaru, before he slowly ran through a few hand seals and inhaled, before exhaling out a white-hot sphere of flame that enveloped both bodies. Ryaga's head was one thing, he could just turn it in at any bounty station before going back to Konoha. Ranmaru on the other hand, while it was possible his genes could have been put to use by the village, there was also the fact that Yamanaka could even read the lingering memories of the dead from their corpses. He didn't want to even leave a hint of a possibility of anyone finding out what he was up to. And there was a good chance a Yamanaka would be forced to mind-walk the corpse just to see if there was any information the kid had about his bloodline or a clan. Better safe than sorry. Ignoring the smell of burning flesh, Daiki brought his hands together in a familiar hand seal. A moment later, there was a series of puffs of smoke and 5 identical clones of him appeared. You know what to do, he asked. In response, his own identical copies crossed their arms and gave him 5 smirks. We grind, what else? The one in the center retorted. There could be no other answer. Nodding, Daiki called upon Isabu's chakra and focused. Suinpa, he thought, shadows of black and green warping over his form and he found himself standing once again in the ruins of a large building within the Katabami Gold 9. There was a bunch of people out and about, but before they even realized he was there, Daiki disappeared in a blur of speed. The village of artisans, thankfully wasn't very far from the Katabami gold mine. It was directly north actually, and was only a day's walk away, but running there at a steady pace only took a few hours. It was actually near the northern border of the land of rivers, which lead into the land of rain. Spooky to think he was so close to the Akatsuki headquarters. Maybe I should see if I can find their little cave safe house here in the land of rivers while I'm here? Daiki mused. That could come in handy later. It seemed the most likely place any Jinchuriki caught in the land of fire or land of wind would be taken to at least, and it actually wasn't that far from the waterfall village either, a direct line, so it was probably where Fu got sealed in the other timeline as well. He put that out of mind for the most. He was currently at his destination, taking a stroll through the village towards the main square, where a helpful nice lady running a stall told him the leader of the village's residence and main office was located. Besides, it had been a fruitful few hours. His clones had put in a lot of work, with the help and advice of Isabu, and his chakra making sure they constantly had enough to train as they pleased. He had gotten a handle on the abilities of his new eyes. Granted, it was made much easier by the fact he knew exactly what they could do and only had to puzzle out how to activate them, but still. Gotta admit though, this place is amazing. Daiki mused, head going from side to side as he walked through the village, idly taking in all the shops and stalls he could see. It really was a village of artisans. Everywhere he went he could see stores selling paintings, stalls selling elaborate pottery, tons of weapon shops, and he'd counted dozens of smithies. It was a place entirely dedicated to the trade. He could respect the grind set. It wasn't long later that Daiki arrived at the village leader's main residence and entered. He was directed to a large office area, with a small waiting room outside, a secretary waiting behind a small desk. "Hello, may I help you?" she asked, a slender, rather petite and short, pretty lady, looking to be in her mid-20s with brown bob-cut hair, light brown eyes and a kind smile. "Hey, I'm from the Leaf Village," Daiki greeted her with a friendly smile of his own. "I've got a delivery for your leader." "Ah, I see," she nodded in understanding, "the fire alignment or..." "If you'd like to take a seat and wait, I'll let Tomio-sama know you're here once he's done speaking to his current visitor." Just as she finished, he heard a loud bang come from within the office, followed by a shout, "When will you see sense, you old fool?" "This is our sacred duty," a man shouted angrily. The secretary winced, giving him a shaky smile and not commenting. He decided to do her a solid and not ask about it. "Fire alignment or?" "What's what?" he asked instead. Her smile turned a little bit more genuine, and a tinge thankful for the topic change. "It's a special type of aura that reacts very well to fire-type chakra," she was happy to explain. "Do you know about chakra blades?" "Yeah," Daiki nodded. "I'm wanting to take a look at some while I'm here, get a feel for the prices." Good. I can recommend you some shops that have good deals then," she beamed. "But anyway, I'm sure you know about elemental affinities. The ore you're delivering is a type of ore that for all intents and purposes has its own affinity and will make for forging fire alignment chakra blades. The reason why this is because the land of fire is known for the fact that the vast majority of the common population have an innate fire affinity, and it in a sense resonates with the land itself, and the land absorbs this chakra, and in turn produces this ore." "Huh, so that was how chakra blades had their unique properties then? That was really interesting to know. So does that mean you import lightning alignment or, for instance, from the land of lightning?" Daiki asked, curious. "For the most part, yes," she confirmed, "though it's not like you can't find water alignment or in the land of fire, it's just much more common where the water affinity is much more prevalent, such as the land of water." "I see," Daiki stroked his chin. "Then what about chakra blades that aren't aligned to any specific element?" He wondered. He knew those were a thing after all. "The ore for those are a bit rarer," the secretary shrugged. "We generally only get those from the land of iron, and chakra blades from them usually cost a lot more as well." That did make sense to him. "Thanks a bunch for explaining this to me, you've cleared up quite a bit for me," he grinned at her, leaning lightly on her desk. "I'm Daiki, and you?" She smiled prettily at him. "Ochako," she introduced herself, "and thanks for not asking about that." She trailed off, glancing slightly over her shoulder at the office, where he could still faintly make out a pair of male voices arguing. I'm much more interested in you," he winked. "How about once I'm done here, I take you out to dinner and you can show me the best shops to check out for chakra blades?" She giggled lightly, cheeks flushing. "Well, I do finish for the night in less than an hour," she revealed, looking him over, lingering particularly on his muscular arms, revealed fully by the black tank top he is wearing. He had to show off the gains the grind had bestowed upon him after all. Her gaze drifted to his face and she studied him a bit, cheeks darkening as he wiggled his eyebrows, only to suddenly frown. "Wait, how old are you, Daiki?" 13, he revealed hesitantly. Once he graduated and got his headband, he was legal after all. Ochako winced. Let's shelve that dinner. I can still show you some weapon shops if you want though. Well, that sucked. If it's about the age, I'm a shinobi, you know, he pointed out, but he wouldn't push beyond that. We're not a shinobi village, haven't been for over 50 years, civilians aren't of legal age until 16 here, she replied. Sorry, you're just a bit too young for me. Lame, but understandable, fair enough, don't want to make you uncomfortable, he shrugged and let the matter drop. Just because they lived on the same continent, and not really that far from each other, didn't mean their culture would be the same after all. And the world looked very different to a civilian than it did to a shinobi or kunoichi who had to be prepared to die young, or die even the first time they ever left their village. It was a little bit awkward to just sit and chat with the lady who turned him down. On her part at least, Daiki didn't really mind, but she apparently felt bad about it. Thankfully, neither of them had to deal with the awkwardness for much longer, because about roughly 15 minutes after she turned him down, the office doors behind her slammed open, and a large man with messy brown hair, wearing a long buttoned-up trench coat stormed out, a white headband depicting the symbol of the artisan village atop his forehead, and a large completely black double-edged sword, with a shining green jewel held in the tip hanging on his back. He paused for a moment as he caught sight of Daiki, before sneering, a Konoha shinobi. He narrowed his eyes at him, before spitting in disgust and walking away, leaving the room. Daiki watched him go, before turning to Ochako and raising an eyebrow at the older woman. I thought you said you guys don't have shinobi anymore, he asked, curious. Not to mention, he recognized that guy. He was one of his 4 targets after all, how lucky. She gave him a shaky grimace of a smile. We don't, he's an exception though. I suppose, she sighed, he's part of one of the 4 families that served the creator of this village and are against not having our own shinobi forces and us doing business with your village in particular. The hell did the guy have against Kono? Is it 'cause the Naidame Hokage killed the creator of this village? Daiki asked. He'd been surprised to learn that tidbit when he was checking out information about the village before his mission. Yes, sorry about that, Ochako apologized, bowing her head for a moment before standing up. One moment Daiki, I'll let Tomio-sama know you're here. She stood up from the desk, and made her way into her leader's office. Daiki eyed her backside as she went. It was too bad she was turned off by the age thing. She was pretty hot, a nice rack, and she stretched out that pencil skirt she was wearing nicely. Holding up his hands in a cross seal, he summoned a shadow clone to his side. His copy immediately blurred, disappearing to take care of the mission he created it for. To follow that cunt that just left and find out where he was going. Moments later, Ochako came back out and let him know the village leader would see him now. The village leader wasn't really in the mood for visitors after dealing with his unpleasant guest, so it was a pretty quick meeting, in and out, handing over the package he was given to bring and accepting the payment to bring back to the Leaf Village. After that, Ochako was, more or less happy to show him around the village, especially the shop's sealing weapons, though she was still walking a bit on eggshells around him. He decided to nip that in the bud. You know, you don't need to feel bad or awkward about turning me down, he brought up. It's not a big a deal, I'm not offended or anything. Ochako sighed. That's good, she accepted. I still feel bad though, it takes a lot of courage to ask somebody out after all. Maybe, he agreed, for others, it's kind of not a big issue though, at least to me. When I put my life on the line fighting enemy shinobi all the time, it doesn't seem as hard to do. She paused in her steps and grimaced at his words, but he pushed on. I just thought you're pleasant and beautiful, so shoot my shot. Daiki shrugged. If we hit it off, cool, if not, could have still been a fun night to remember, he chuckled, and winked at her. It was funny how knowingly pursuing a path where his life had constant threats to it, made flirting, or at least making his interest in hot girls, incredibly easy and not a big issue. Oh. Ochako uttered, before the meaning of his words seemed to fully register and her cheeks went rosy red and eyes wide. Oh. Yup. Daiki unashamedly confirmed. Oh wow, she cupped her cheeks. You're really bold, huh? She peeked up at him. She was a short lady after all, barely reaching 5 feet, which made her curves stand out. I know what I want, and I go after it when I do. Daiki grinned at her, and boldly let his eyes roam over her body, then met her eyes. And you're definitely worth wanting. Gee, give me a minute. Ochako sputtered, face going neon red and turning away from him for a second, probably to gain her bearings. Daiki froze just then, a rush of memories slipping into his mind. His clone had just dispelled itself, giving him the information he needed. He quickly made a clone, covering the smoke with a quick transformation, and disappeared out of sight, leaving the clone to take his place and enjoy having the older woman show him around. He had an objective to complete. Daiki made his way to the roofs, moving in a blur of speed too fast for any civilians to notice. He made his way to the southern district of the village, where a large property surrounded by a huge, spiky-topped gate surrounded the perimeter. Despite the size of the property, it wasn't exactly packing in decor. There was a huge semicircular mansion, spread around a grand mausoleum. Considering the fervent boner these guys had for their dead leader, he was willing to bet that was where the corpse of that seamy twit that got ganked by Tobirama was resting. Maybe I should tag his coffin? Daiki mused with a grin. A big old Daiki was here bitchay just for a laugh. He shook his head. Nah, that would be way too juvenile. Mostly because he didn't want it to be known he was involved with them while they were still in the village. His story relied on them specifically being out of the village after all. Which was why he was going to make them disappear, alongside the corpse of their former leader. Grave robbing, now I see. Isabu commented. He sounded exasperated. Daiki shrugged. He had to do what he had to do. Not replying back, Daiki focused his chakra into his eyes, allowing him to see through surfaces like the Byakugan. Almost immediately, he clocked onto 4 figures, all gathered within a large room within the center of the mansion. There we go, he grinned, and focused more chakra into his eyes, and focused, and voices echoed in his ears. Is completely outrageous, one voice started, coming from the largest of the 4, a tall, broad man. Indeed, another, the shortest, agreed. He's a fool. What do you expect, a peace-loving weakling fool? The only female of the quartet spat, shrugging her shoulders. Traitorous too. They don't understand the greatness of our family's mission to bring Simi-sama back and get back at the Leaf Village and all the others who have mocked us. Quite right, Kujaku, the one he'd followed here, nodded approvingly. That's why, we'll just have to do this ourselves. With our ultimate weapons, it won't be hard to defeat the Shikaku and use its chakra. We just have to be patient for a time when the Jinchuriki has left his pitiful village and gone far enough for us not to be fingered, and then we'll slaughter him, drain him dry, and kill all the fools of this village for their ignorance. Those who do not support Simi-sama do not deserve to live. The other 3 burst into cheers and shouts of agreement, happily listing the names of villagers they were going to personally enjoy killing and blah blah blah. They seriously took a sip of the crazy juice, didn't they? Daiki snorted, shaking his head in disbelief. These guys really did think a guy who got ganked and killed easily by Tobirama Senju over 50 years ago, a guy they'd never even met, was the be-all and end-all to everything. Well, Daiki had seen just about enough. He focused on his seal and drew on Isabu's chakra, the bijou willingly helping it along. A moment later, a familiar bubbling red chakra cloak with 3 swaying red tails formed behind him. Then, Daiki focused on his new eyes, and a second later, red dust shimmered into existence around him and was absorbed into the cloak and him for good measure. As he did, the chakra signature he was giving off was completely hidden away. Even if a sensor was standing a single step away from him, they wouldn't be able to sense his chakra at all, or Isabu's now. Hell, if another Dujitsu user like a Byakugan holder looked at him, they'd probably think he was an illusion or fake because they wouldn't even be able to see his chakra network. Then, Daiki hopped off the roof, over the gate, and stealthily strolled his way over to the mansion, summarily let himself in, and masking his footfalls using his chakra cloak, he made his way through the mansion towards where he could see them with his Dujitsu. I should think of a name for these actually. Daiki mused. Crimson or red were too cliché, he thought. So maybe, Shinkigan? The all-concealing scarlet eye? Yeah, that worked. He was a genius for sure. He was the worst enemy of a sensor ninja. Especially since most of them relied more on their ability to sense chakra rather than their full-on normal physical senses. With his eyes, he could keep constant track of his enemy and their conversation and outright see if any of them had any suspicions. If he wanted to, he could even push it further and see their surface thoughts. The Shinkigan was fucking broken, man. Daiki had no idea where it even came from. His best bet was that a Hyuga and an Uchiha got the Fukisaki on and Ranmaru was the orphaned or abandoned byproduct. They didn't notice a thing. Granted, these guys were all scrubs who couldn't stand up to Genin without super special gear. The only true threat was the armor-wearing cunt. He had the infinite armor if he remembered right, and it could absorb a ton of chakra. Positioning himself in front of the door to where they were discussing, Daiki picked out his targets, his roiling tails raising up behind him and lifting his arms at the ready. Then he kicked the door open, slamming it open against the wall with a bang. The quartet inside the large room, all spread around a large table, jumped in alert, but far too slow. He thrust out both hands. At the very same time he whipped his tails through the room. Before they even realized what was going on fully, the woman, the shortest, and the guy he followed here were swept up by his tails, and went crunch as he squeezed, pulping them like he did Raiga. The last of the four found himself submerged in a sea of red chakra, two massive chakra claws forming around him. The armor, as he expected, began rapidly draining the chakra of the claw aimed at his torso, and it quickly withered away and sucked inside the tiger-headed armor strapped to his chest. Too bad that was a feint. The second grasped him by the legs, making the man scream in agony as his bones turned to powder under the grip of the claw, and then jerked him back through the air, sending him towards Daiki. A split second later, Daiki shot forward with a punch, his fist meeting the large airborne man's cheek, and snapping his neck, dropping him to the ground, dead a moment later. Daiki blinked, letting the chakra cloak fade from around him. Well, that was easy, he noted. He remembered these guys putting up a much bigger fight in the other timeline. Then again, that was against actual genin and a few chunin, sure talented, very powerful ones for their age. But not ones that could stealthy approach them with the full might of a bijou and attack them by surprise at full power. Note to self, the ability to enter bijou forms and cloak myself from being sensed at the same time is utterly broken, he thought to himself. You think? Isabu noted, dryly. He did indeed. Looking around the room, Daiki was about to strip the four of them of their armor, before noticing something. He hadn't seen them on his way here in the halls or any rooms he passed, but in here, he could see them clearly. Swords. Swords of varying sizes and shapes, spread about the room and hanging from the walls, giving off a disty chakra-like aura to his eyes. A lot like the variety of chakra blades he saw when Ochako was showing him around earlier before he switched with his clone and came here. Interesting, very interesting. From what he could see, there was two of each element, crossing over each other and lined up. Despite the fact they were expensive chakra blades, swords at that, each probably worth a good million ryo at least each, they were used as no more than decorative pieces. Yink! While he was divesting the actual prizes he came here for from the bodies of his victims, he grabbed them as well. Then he sealed the bodies away. While he was at that, he was especially careful not to break anything, to make it look as if they had left without any struggle and disappeared somewhere. He'd get rid of the bodies later. While he was at it, Daiki scoured the mansion with clones, looking for anything of interest. He found quite a bit of ryo, and took half of it. Again, he wanted to make sure that it looked like they willingly left themselves and were not attacked in any way. But beyond that, he found nothing else of note. Beyond a scroll that went into the various abilities of the four weapons that combined together to form the ultimate weapon, so the shape can be customized? Daiki read, meaning, it didn't have to take on that stupid-looking thing Sini had done with them? Well, that was good and really interesting. The flame blade and weaklessness soaring short swords apparently couldn't change shape, but the main tiger-faced armor could more or less take on a custom appearance decided on by the user who connected their chakra to it, and the three odd green orbs spread about the three swords that came together, apparently, when combined into the ultimate weapon, gave the user the ability to float. Neat. Not that he really needed it, but still neat. I'll check these out more later. Daiki shrugged, sealing the scroll away in his palm and preparing to leave. He had to grab Sini's corpse and get out of Dodge. He'd get a hotel room for the night and then head out in the morning. I'll hit up Tanzakugai first before heading back, he thought as he made his way back out towards the entrance of the mansion. The closest bounty station that he remembered was hid in a urinal not far from the place. He had no idea why in a urinal though. Daiki paused, blinking, he uttered, and then a smirk spread across his face. His clone had just popped and sent the memories to him. Apparently while he was busy here, the clone had gotten a quick bite with Ochako, before walking her home and bidding her goodbye. He'd flirted with her a bit more, and she actually gave in for a bit. He made out with her, even felt her up a bit, before she broke off and headed inside her house, bidding him goodbye. Sure, he may have played the issue up a little that he could really die anytime, and she felt a bit sorry for him and got roped in a little bit, but if he wanted, he probably could have pushed the issue with her, but that was enough for him. Nice. Daiki chuckled, praising himself. In a really good mood now and with a whistle on his lips and a jaunty spring in his step, the young genin made his way out to go yank a corpse from a grave. That was just how he rolled. Chapter 14. The next morning, Daiki was posing in front of the mirror in the hotel room he purchased for the night. "What do you think?" the boy asked. "I think you look like a bandit that is trying to look like a big shot." Isabu deadpanned. "You mean like a handsome rogue?" Daiki grinned, curling his bicep at the mirror and eyeing himself. His clothing had went through a little bit of a change this morning. He hadn't exactly been too tired last night, what with him being a new Jinchuriki and all and having more energy than he ever remembered having before. So he'd played about with some of his loot through the night to pass the time. And in the process, found a very interesting feature in one of the items he'd liberated and given a new home like the ever-generous and caring saintly lad he was. Well, his clothes hadn't changed that much. He was still wearing his black combat sandals and his black pants, and he was still wearing his tank top. The only real change was the single armored blue harness over his right shoulder, while atop it sat the face of a roaring, spiky-faced turtle. "Why did you have to make it look like my face?" Isabu grimaced. "Gotta represent," he shrugged. See, during the night, when going over the plans those morons had for their ultimate weapon, he found something very interesting. There was actually a lot of seal work involved in the creation of the infinite armor, as they called it, the basis of their plan. See, Daiki originally thought it just siphoned chakra, that yeah, while useful, wasn't something worth wearing something so lame looking. Only, when he looked further into workings of the armor, he found it wasn't quite so simple. Yes, it was designed to absorb chakra. But that wasn't all. No, on top of that, it also had the function to direct that chakra to someone else, or convert the chakra into pure life force and give it to someone. When he figured that out, Daiki kind of understood why their plan was to go after the Ichibi. They needed a vast amount of life force to revive their master, Simi. The only thing I can't figure out is how filling up his corpse with life energy and basically bringing his body to life again yoinked his soul back from the afterlife. Daiki mused. If it was just a matter of there possibly not being an afterlife, he'd maybe understand, but no, there very clearly was one, called the Pure Land even. Well, either way, until he figured out how the seals worked on it to recreate the work on his own, Daiki could put the infinite armor to good use. For example, recovering his lost life force from using the hero's water nearly a month ago by having Isabu fill it up with his chakra and then converting it to life force and slurping it up. I should remind you, I am not a chakra dispenser for all the crazy ideas you come up with. Isabu pointed out dryly. You didn't say no though. Daiki reminded him with a chuckle. Isabu did not reply. Well, the infinite armor wasn't the only thing he'd found had some nifty extra features he didn't know. For example, the pair of shining silver blades idly rotating midair beside him. Apparently the Kiba blades could be remotely controlled by the wielder. Combined with inscribing the link seal to his Dimension Force seal, so he could return them to it wherever they were, well, he could think of so many fun ways to play about with them. Daiki really wanted to find out who in the hell made the Kiba blades, because they were fucking overpowered. Samahata just got bumped down to second place on the totem pole. He eyed the blades, massive grin spread across his face for a few moments, before with a thought, returning the airborne blades to his seal. As much as he would just love to play about with them right now, he had shit to do. To Tanzakugai to drop off ahead, collect some sweet dash and then back to Konoha to face the music. Fucking Madara. Daiki grumbled hours later as he left the public urinal house to the Tanzakugai bounty station behind. Scowling, Daiki kicked a rock and watched it soar off into the distance. That guy's made an enemy for life, he vowed. No, seriously, fuck that guy. Him and Obito actually, he knew the real one had a hand in the initial situation and Obito just continued it on because he was a salty fuck. Yes, Vado angrily end them, but no, not for the fact their schemes have killed tens of thousands and put the very world at risk, but because they lowered the economy of the Mist Village and in turn, lowered the bounty for the man you killed. Isabu sounded very exasperated. Daiki paused. Well, when you say it like, you make me sound unreasonable, he replied. You're very unreasonable actually, you have too much tunnel vision. Isabu replied simply. Well, excuse him for being disappointed that the head of one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Bloody Mist was only worth 5 million ryo. You looted 5 million from that mansion in the village of artisans just last night, after looting weaponry that in total must be worth over 100 million. Isabu deadpanned. It was the principle of the matter? Isabu sighed and did not comment any further. Daiki supposed he won then. It wasn't like he was, what was the word, ungrateful? Truly disappointed? Whatever, it wasn't like he was actually down about getting 5 million ryo on top of getting what he actually wanted from Raiga. But freaking Asuma Sarutobi was worth 35 million. Daiki thought he'd get at least 20 for Raiga. And he could have gotten himself a sweet new pad with loads of dash left over for sure. Guess I just need to grind up my wallet as well, he mused, shrugging and getting a move on. While he was here in Tanzakugai, he may as well go to one of the leaf outposts and send a messenger hawk back to the village, top it off with a message for the Hokage's eyes only, very urgent, and fill it up with some vague stuff about tails, turtles and such, prepare him in advance and make sure the man knew he was thinking of the village first. Even though he wasn't. He continued on, making his way into the village and traversing through it to the other side where the outpost was. On the way, right in the middle of the entertainment district, a large street known for being vice-central, with many a casino and bar, a flash of white in Daiki's peripheral caught his eye. If it wasn't for his new eyes, he wouldn't have even noticed with how brief it was. But with the Shinkigen, he could see much clearer and in much more detail even in the corner of his eye than he did from his previous full eyes. It was a long mane of white hair. Hello, ladies. Daiki turned and stared, watching as a tall, broad-shouldered man in green and red, with a large and long mane of white hair boldly swaggered his way into a brothel. Impassion. That was the name he read off of the sign atop the two-story, motel look-alike of a building. Well, at least they knew what they were about. To think he'd run into Jiraiya of the Sannin of all people here, on his way back to the village. Granted, from what he remembered, the Sandaime recalled him to return during the Chunin exams, so the guy had to have been in the general area. I can use this. Daiki's lips quirked up into a brief calculating smirk. He knew of course, when he returned to the village and let things slip, he would be questioned quite a bit and examined. He just wasn't scared of his secrets being pulled from his mind, because anyone that entered his mind was going to meet his big, giant three-tailed turtle buddy. But, what if he went to Jiraiya, had him examine his seal, confirmed the okay and then sent the message back to the Hokage? Well, then he'd have a rock-solid alibi now, wouldn't he? And if he spun it right, like being hesitant to return to the village as he was right now, well, wouldn't that just paint him in a shining patriotic light? Honestly, Daiki found himself having to resist the urge to rub his palms together and let out a rather Orochimaru-like, kukukuku. He didn't of course, because he just didn't fit that look and it would make him look cartoonishly evil. He was debonairly evil after all. Please don't apply words to yourself that you clearly don't understand the meaning of. Isabu sighed. Some people just couldn't appreciate his style, it seemed. Plan branching out in his mind, Daiki followed the man into the building. As soon as he entered, the clinking of bottles and drinking glasses, boasting men and cooing women entered his ears. It didn't take him long at all to find his target. Jiraiya was already sitting at a booth, sake on the table, his arms around a pair of particularly voluptuous and scantily clad ladies, both blonde, one long pigtails, the other in a high ponytail. He clearly had a type. Ignoring the going-ons around him, lest he fall to temptation and take a few of these whores to Pound Town when the grind awaited, Daiki made his way over to the booth. Jiraiya-sama, hello. Daiki greeted him politely. The white-haired man looked up from where he was staring into the valley of a lovely pair of tits and raised an eyebrow at him. Oh, is this a friend of yours, Jiraiya-kun? Busty Pigtails cooed, rubbing the man's chest. He's quite the cutie, and look at those muscles. Ponytail agreed, eyeing his arms. Daiki resisted the urge to flex, the gains from the grind were designed to do so after all. Something like that. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes for a brief second at Daiki, before grinning at him. Bit young to be in here, are you not, kid? Not really, Daiki shrugged. Actually, I'd probably be following your lead right about now if I didn't need to talk to you about something important. Kinda busy here, Jiraiya answered with a shrug, inside eyeing both the women beside him, then jerking his head and urging Daiki to leave. The gallant and handsome Jiraiya will gladly give you an autograph later, like say, tomorrow if you're still here. Well, it wasn't like Daiki didn't understand the situation here. He'd be pissed too if he was about to plow the ever-loving shit out of two hot-ass women like this and some punk-ass cockblocker interrupted him. Alright, I suppose I can wait, Daiki shrugged back. I just thought you'd be interested in this really huge turtle I found the other day. A turtle. Jiraiya looked at him as if he were crazy, completely confused. Yeah, a super huge turtle, he nodded, bigger than any living creature I've ever seen before. Heck, I bet there could only be 8 others at most in existence, he added, lifting up 3 fingers. Jiraiya's eyes widened. I see, a huge turtle, huh? Consider me interested. He unwound his arms from around the ladies of the night and stood up. Jiraiya-kun? Pigtails gave him a confused look. Ha ha. Sorry ladies, but it seems this young little tadpole needs the guidance of the gallant Jiraiya. The white-haired man laughed boisterously. But don't mind it, I'll make sure to come see you two again later. Make sure to keep yourselves free for me. Bidding the ladies goodbye, the legendary Toad Sannin hopped over the booth table in a smooth motion, drawing oohs and ahs from the ladies, and placed an arm around Daiki's shoulder, and then the world blurred around them as they were suddenly moving. Moments later, they appeared on the roof of a building on the opposite side of the street from the whorehouse. I hope this isn't a joke, kid. Jiraiya clicked his tongue, letting go of Daiki. You said you found the sandbai? Man, this guy was absurdly fast. If he wasn't wrong, he was actually faster than Daiki was, even in his 3-tailed cloak form. It showed him how far he still had to go. I did, Daiki confirmed. I came across the sandbai yesterday on my way through the land of rivers, during a mission to the village of artisans. Jiraiya grimaced. That could be bad. The tall white-haired man crossed his arms. Tensions are already high with the sand, and the land of rivers is right in between the lands of wind and fire. If they catch wind of it being there and move to capture for it. Well, it's not exactly there anymore. Daiki cut his thoughts off. What? Jiraiya stopped cold and blinked. What do you mean it's not there anyway? Bijou aren't exactly subtle. Hell, actually, if you came across it, why are you still standing here? You're a genin, right? I don't get the feel of a jonin off of you, at least. Why aren't you dead? Yeah, about that. Daiki pulled down the collar of his shirt and channeled chakra, allowing his 4-symbol seal to appear on his torso. Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock. See, I kind of came across a bunch of guys having subdued it and wanting to use it to attack the Leaf Village, so I kind of jumped in and sealed it inside myself when they were tired out. You what? Jiraiya gaped at him, fish-mouthed and eyes wide. Jiraiya, for a moment, thought he was having some form of crazy fever dream, that or he was just drunk out of his gourd and hallucinating. Let me get this straight. He rubbed at the bridge of his nose and looked at the muscular kid, wearing a weird turtle face thing on his shoulder as if it was stylish or something. During your mission to deliver ore to the village of artisans, you found their little noble wannabe ninja planning to revive their dead leader and strike out at the village, that right? Right. The kid nodded, those ominous crimson eyes of his holding his gaze. Eyes that apparently didn't belong to him until yesterday at that. So you decided to follow them and spy on them, even when they left the village itself, only to find them meeting up with Raiga Kurosaki, formerly of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen, he asked next. Yup, the kid nodded, crossing his absurdly muscular arms for his age. What kind of crazy training regiment was this kid going through anyway? He was built like a brick shithouse. Give him a few years and he may end up making the rakeage look puny. With Raiga in tow alongside a partner of his, they traveled to the south of the land of rivers, to a massive lake, where the sandbai was, and drew it out. Then using that armor on your shoulder, they drained most of its chakra and then hypnotized it with those eyes you have now to keep it docile. Pretty much, the kid nodded, pulling his arms out of their crossed position to point at his eyes. I think they have the ability to cast genjutsu through the eyes like the Sharingan, but I don't really know any proper genjutsu, so can't tell yet. More genjutsu eyes, lovely stuff that. He'd totally need to look into the possibility of a clan with eyes like that. They could be a real problem in the future if they became enemies. Right, more or less with you so far, Jiraiya replied, and he could understand it. There were plenty of people that wanted to get their hands on the bijou. He knew of a specific group in particular after all that was after them. What I don't get is what possessed you to pull some maniac plan out of your ass and literally steal the sandbai out from under them. Like seriously kid, what the hell is wrong with you? What kind of crazy bastard would willingly seal a bijou inside themselves? Jinchuriki were pretty much universally treated like trash. He winced at that as soon as he thought it. He really needed to check up on Naruto more often. The kid gave a flippant shrug. They wanted to soup up their weapons, revive some guy that fought the Nidaime Hokage and direct a bijou at the village. He pointed out as if the answer was obvious. By sealing the sandbai inside myself, I made sure that would never happen. Even if I died in the process, the sandbai would take time to reform and invalidate their plans completely. Jiraiya sighed as he digested the kid's words. He wasn't wrong. That was the problem though. For a kid this age to be so willing to throw his life away for the village, it made his guts roil. He was a genin for crying out loud. Situations like what he apparently got caught up in were missions for the likes of himself, or at least Kakashi or something. Not a fresh little rookie, no matter how big his muscles or his skill with seals. Because that definitely couldn't be denied. It was rough around the edges, but that was a pretty damn solid 4-symbol seal the kid had put on himself. Things worked out pretty well in the end. Despite what I thought though, the kid continued on pulling him from his thoughts. The sandbai was grateful enough to work with me straight away to put them down, and with them exhausted and with the sandbai's power amping me up, I killed them all, took their shit and decided to take these eyes while I was at it. I'm pretty good with the mystical palm jutsu, so I figured, best not to let them go to waste, you know? No, not you know. Jiraiya wanted to scream at the boy. Who the hell trivialized ripping out their own eyes and replacing them with another's, talking about it as if it were only worth a passing mention, like the weather or something. This kid gave him some serious Orochimaru vibes. But at least he could admit they were more of the positive kind. Orochimaru would have never confronted a superior force, exhausted or not, and steal their prey right out from under them, knowing he'd most likely die in the process just to protect the village. This is so absurd. Jiraiya shook his head in disbelief, sitting his ass down on the ledge of the roof they were on. It was such an utterly crazy, off-the-wall stupid situation of a story, that there was no way the kid could be making it up. Like seriously, making chakra weapons to subdue a bijou, teaming up with a member of the 7 ninja swordsmen and a guy with an unknown dijitsu he'd never even heard of before, to revive a guy who had been dead for well over 50 years now. Hell, the guy was dead before Jiraiya was even born, for crying out loud, and he was an old fogey himself now. God, the series of events was literally so stupidly retarded that nobody would tell a story like that with a straight face unless it was true. And to make things even more ludicrous, the sandbai apparently had taken a liking to the kid. He really needed another drink right about now to digest this shit. Team 8 reporting, mission complete. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen wished Kurenai wouldn't be so formal with him all the time. She was a dutiful young lass no doubt, but sometime in the future, there was a good chance of her becoming his daughter-in-law if the amount of rendezvous she and Asuma had together over the past year since he returned from the Guardian Ninja was anything to go by. Then again, his days would be much more enjoyable if people in general were a lot less formal around him. Sadly, that only applied to boisterous rascals like Naruto-kun. Splendid work, he praised the rookie genin lightly, idly reading over the report Kurenai handed to him of their delivery mission, favoring the 3 young ninja with a warm smile. Young Shino inclined his head in acceptance of the praise, while Kiba-kun grinned widely, thumping his nose proudly. His eyes landed on the Hyuga heiress and rested on her for a moment. My, how quickly youths could change indeed. Only a few weeks ago would the timid girl have ducked her head down after meeting his eyes shyly, but now she held his gaze and smiled back politely. Daiki-kun's work, he mused, according to Kakashi at least. Apparently, the young genin whose ethic had caught his eye recently, had came across her watching over Naruto. The young girl's infatuation with the boy was well known to him. She was always watching the boy, and he saw her frequently not far away when he was checking on the boy himself. The boy had wrought quite the change in the Hyuga girl. It was almost like looking at another girl entirely. While not a tall girl by any stretch, she always seemed so much more tiny with the way she shrunk in on herself and hid away in baggy clothing. Now, her spine was straight, there was some pride to the girl now. He idly wondered what Daiki said to her to bring about a change quite like this. And that wasn't even going into her physical changes. She'd swapped out her general attire for a new outfit, switching from blue pants to black and replacing her baggy white jacket with a lavender and white zipper. And in just a few weeks, her hair had grown massively, reaching all the way down to her mid-back. Not a natural hair growth, of course, most likely a salon run by a former shinobi or kunoichi with medic nin training. He knew that the mystical palm jutsu could be used to massively increase the speed at which hair grew. A few sessions in a salon like that would account for her hair growth. Just then, there was a puff of smoke beside his arm on the table he was sitting beside, a small green toad appearing from within it, a scroll strapped to his back. A frog, young Kiba cried in shock. A toad actually, Hiruzen corrected gently, reaching over to pluck the scroll from the toad's back, at which point it promptly disappeared, one of my students' summons to be exact. A message from Jiraiya-sama? Kurenai noted. Indeed. Hiruzen nodded, unfurling the scroll. He wondered why Jiraiya was sending him a message now. It was only the other day they corresponded on the matter of him coming back to the village. Naruto had used the Kyuubi's chakra for the first time during Team 7's mission to Wave, and his student was a much more able user of Fuinjutsu than him, so he wanted him to check the 8 trigram seal and make sure there was no damage to it. One could never be too careful with the Kyuubi after all. Quickly, he began glancing over the scroll, reading the contents. And his mouth open, eyes widening ever so slightly, only to gradually, bit by bit, get progressively wider. The Sanbai, a newly discovered Dujitsu, a plot against the village, a member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist Village, chakra weapons that could rival the weapons of the 7 legendary weapons of the Mist. And in the middle of it all, young Daiki, leaping into action to protect the village from such a possible threat, in the process, becoming a Jinchuriki, no, by all accounts a perfect Jinchuriki, gaining possession of a new Dujitsu and claiming the legendary Kiba blades for his own, on top of killing not only a known A-rank shinobi, but multiple other powerful shinobi as well, at least all of Chunin rank. For a moment, Hiruzen felt the urge to laugh. It was quite the tall tale after all. Except, he never found anything remotely hinting at, got you good. He circulated his chakra through his system quickly, just to make sure there wasn't some form of genjutsu woven into the scroll that caught him without him noticing it upon unrolling it. But no, it was real. To think the Sanbai was so close by with none the wiser, his thoughts raced. That was a disaster waiting to happen. And to think, the village of artisan nobles had teamed up with a missing ninja to capture it. All to revive Simi, he grimaced. He himself was but a young lad when his sensei killed the man, but he well remembered the arrogance and contemptuous ease in which the man ripped the lives of those weaker than him and tormented those he ruled above. He was a tyrant with delusions of grandeur far above his station, and when he set his sights upon the Leaf Village, he and his followers were put down like dogs by the Nidaime Hokage. In of themselves, Raiga Kurosaki and the 4 Celestials, as they were called by Simi, were no match for the Leaf, even with this Dujitsu user with them. Having a bijou unleashed within their midst though, which they apparently planned to do after using the bijou for all it was worth, was a different matter entirely. Oh, he was sure they'd be able to suppress the Sanbai, there was no doubt, but even with Kakashi and Danzo backing him up, Hiruzen knew it would not be an easy or quick fight, especially if they weren't expecting it. The loss of life in the village would be massive. The only reason the casualties during the time the Kyuubi got loose from Kushina weren't much larger was because he got lucky, that was all, and was able to push it out of the village. That same tactic would not work with the Sanbai, not with its massively armored shell. Far from the strongest of the bijou, the Sanbai was nonetheless the most durable of them all. It was a scenario he definitely did not want taking place in the village. And thankfully, apparently according to the efforts of young Daiki, they wouldn't need to. It was a lot to process so suddenly. Hokage-sama? Kurenai's voice broke him from his thoughts. Hiruzen coughed. Sorry, you're dismissed, I was caught up thinking. He smiled at the Jonin and her team. You know how old minds like mine tend to wander, he joked. She smiled back at him briefly, before bowing her head and escorting her team out. Hiruzen wasted no time in excusing himself from the mission desk and making his way back to his office. He ruminated on the last part of the message Jiraiya had sent him. The way he set up the seal is incredibly risky, the Sanbai could leave at any point at once. Honestly, it should have left right after helping him out, it can't be that grateful, right? Honestly, I've never spoke to any of the bijou, the most I know is from Kushina talking about the Kyubi. But, the kid was happy to explain why, and what a doozy it is. The sandbai itself feels safer inside the kid. The kid apparently is willing to work with it, and that makes a big difference for it, especially with what the sandbai itself apparently claims, enough to the point where it's willing to lend the kid its full power if he asks for it. The former Mizukage, he was being controlled by a man with a Sharingan, claiming to be Madara Uchiha. Bullshit, of course, the man is long dead, but we've got an AWOL Uchiha out there who isn't Itachi Uchiha, cause apparently he actually attacked the former Mizukage as well at some point, and this mystery Uchiha has the ability to control a Kage with his eyes alone. Hiruzen grimaced. Madara Uchiha. Someone claiming to be him, with the visual prowess to control a Kage, was not someone to be taken lightly. Not at all the real Madara style. He'd only met the man a few times as a lad himself, but he was aware of what type of person he was. Anyone who met the man was. His wife, dearly departed Biwako, had met him as a child herself, and even just the man smiling at her had terrified her to the bone. Perhaps a direct descendant, he thought to himself. Madara spent much time outside the village before he went rogue and had his climactic battle to the end with Hashirama-sama. The man's disgust for his own clan later was well established as well, so it was unlikely he had any descendants within the village before the Uchiha massacre. How troubling. Hiruzen entered his office, collapsing on his chair and rubbing his forehead. Tensions with the sand were rising every single day, and Inoki was always watching and waiting, sitting on that fence of his and prepared to strike if the opportunity presented itself. And he could never tell what way Kumo would go, but he knew already that they were well prepared should a new war break out. Still, it seemed a silver lining had come from the machinations of this mysterious Uchiha. Daiki-kun has the full might of a bijou behind him. Hiruzen mused. That was splendid news, especially confirmed by Jiraiya. The situation would still bear watching closely, but... Hiruzen's eyes drifted to the bottom of the scroll where Jiraiya described the rough plan to capture the sandbai and keep it docile. Daiki had both the equipment and the Dojutsu now that were used, so if the sandbai did act up, he should be capable of subduing it on his own, quite possibly, especially considering the fact he had apparently gotten good enough already to replicate the seal he'd seen used on the Nanabai Jinchuriki. Such stupendous talent for the art. The old man's eyes drifted to one of the faux pictures hanging on the wall of his office, one depicting a handsome, blonde-haired man. Perhaps he'll rival you in a few years, he mused. Daiki had really went beyond the call of duty. And according to Jiraiya, the boy had been prepared to lose his life in the process just to attempt to stop their plans for the Leaf Village. Thankfully, the boy was intelligent and picked his timing well, when his opponents were at their very weakest, putting good use to that ruthless ability he had during combat that Kakashi reported of during his mission towards the Waterfall Village. His will of fire burned brightly indeed. Gunma-kun, if only you had looked just a bit deeper. Hiruzen shook his head. Alas, Ganma had wanted a full team of his own, not an apprentice, so no matter how young Daiki impressed him with his talent during his test, it was his teammates that became the weights too heavy for his talent alone to carry. He idly remembered the academy report on the boy. Irika had personally written his file, noting how the boy was above average in all aspects of being a shinobi, but spread himself too thin. He had been lacking direction as a shinobi, and that if he had focused more on one or two aspects of being a shinobi over them all, he would have most likely been a contender for the strongest in his graduating class, and even then, if kept up the rate of growth he was at anyone in all disciplines, he would most likely be a jonin in all aspects by his early 20s, which in of itself was very impressive. Or he could work just that much harder. Hiruzen mused. After he had a nasty run-in with IWA Shinobi on his first C-rank mission and only narrowly avoided losing his life, the boy had thrown himself into his training in a way that would stupefy even Guy. Draining his chakra to the barest hints left before chakra exhaustion, physically training until his body was numb and his muscles crying for rest. Every single day, only to then increase the training when he got his hands on the mystical palm jutsu and used it to increase the rate at which his physical conditioning progressed. Looking at the boy objectively, he was by far the most standout of his generation, even beyond the likes of Sasuke Uchiha and Neji Hyuga. He was strong for his age, dutiful to his training, beyond dutiful, pragmatic, no hesitation in dealing with enemy combatants permanently, had the intelligence to do well in most situations, had no fear to face stronger opponents, was bold, decisive, cunning and cared for his comrades. Hiruzen had been impressed by his training ethic when he looked in on the boy. Kakashi, putting aside the man's amusement in teasing the boy, had nothing but good things to say about him, and even Jiraiya seemed to be praising the boy as well. He would definitely go far in the future, that was for sure. Perhaps he'll take over for me one day? Hiruzen mused with a small chuckle. Give it a few years, the boy may just approach Kakashi's level, perhaps even beyond. And with the full power of a bijou behind him. Well, the boy would not lack for the strength needed for the role. And he had the fire to put his own life on the line to protect the village. All that was truly needed was to see how well he led others, and he could gain that experience as a chunin for sure. Yes, that might not be a bad idea. I'm not getting any younger after all. Hiruzen snorted. It was about time a new candidate for the Godaim stepped up to the plate. The only two on the table right now were Kakashi and Jiraiya after all, and Jiraiya would never accept the role. Chapter 15. For some reason, after he checked Daiki's seal out for him, confirmed that it was done well and sent a message back to the village with his summons for him, Jiraiya pretty much was done with him, didn't even invite him back into the whorehouse with him. How rude. You're getting too much enjoyment out of this. Ichigo pointed out as he made his way through the gates of the Leaf Village. Tanzaku guy was only about an hour or so away at top speed for him after all. Come on, he's a legendary ninja, don't tell me you didn't get a kick out of dropping our story on him and watching him cycle through different variations of shock. Daiki retorted. It truly was the little things that mattered the most in the end. Maybe a little, but you should be careful this does not come back to bite you. You've painted quite the picture of yourself after all, the three-tailed bijou replied. Daiki honestly didn't see how. Sure, his excuse story painted him as a very pragmatic person willing to put his life on the line for the village should a threat arise to it, and he was in the vicinity no matter how little of a chance he stood. Actually, when put like that, he saw Ichigo's point. Well, it's not like they'll ask something absurd of me like laying my life down anytime soon. I'm a perfect Jinchuriki. I should be about as valuable to the Leaf as Killer Bee is to Kyumo. Daiki shrugged. Honestly, the most annoying thing was probably going to be people hanging over his shoulder or maybe trying to suck up to him to endear him even further to the Leaf. With that thought in mind, he made his way through the village, making his way straight to the Hokage Tower. Daiki-kun, what do you think of being Hokage? The Sandaime asked. What? Rewinding to less than a half an hour before, Daiki made his way into the office, finding the Sandaime Hokage already waiting for him. The old man had divested himself of his hat, and had turned his chair around so he could stare out over the village from the window. Ah, Daiki-kun, he glanced back over his shoulder, a small smile on his face directed at him as Daiki closed the door to the older man's office behind his back. Good to see you back, I hear you've had quite the adventure during your last mission. Daiki idly glanced around the office, but he saw nobody else present and no chakra signatures in the immediate vicinity of the circular office. It was quite a trip for sure. He focused on the Hokage and nodded. Sarutobi chuckled. I'll bet, he replied, before spinning slowly around in his chair to face Daiki and directing his warm smile at the boy. Before we get to anything else, I must say this. Thank you, my boy, you have done much for the safety of this village during your mission and you deserve the highest praise I can give. I mean, you could also promote me to Jonin. Daiki replied, lips quirking up a bit. The Hokage chuckled again. Well, I dare say that isn't far off. In fact, I'd like to at least promote you to Chunin this very moment. You deserve that, he replied, but the Chunin exams are coming up soon, as you no doubt remember. Yeah, where was he going with this? In pure fighting ability alone, even before your recent changes, you were quite capable of performing the duties of a Chunin, the Sandaime pointed out. Now though, I suspect even without your new friend's power, you have grown quite massively in fighting ability, and that presents us with an opportunity. In the Chunin exams? Daiki raised an eyebrow. Indeed, it's just an idle thought I had while waiting for you to return. Sarutobi threaded his fingers together lightly, and looked him in the eye. You are of course officially a genin right now, as such, eligible for the exams. And what I mean by this, is you're strong enough to put on a very good show during exams. I dare say, you could dominate the competition, no? Oh, he saw what he was getting at. Maybe, there's a few other genin to look out for, but none I can see that I can't beat. Daiki nodded. The only real problem was Niji, not even Lee. Lee had a crippling weakness to genjutsu and, well, he now had access to a pretty powerful genjutsu through Isabu. But there was still roughly a month left before the Chunin exams, and he could now use much more clones freely and had a bunch of Yugura's techniques ready and waiting for him. With those, plus the Kiba blades, he wouldn't even need Isabu's chakra to beat the Hyuga. I like your confidence, my boy, the Sandaime grinned a bit. Assuming there are no special outliers, I dare say you will win this Chunin exams coming up definitively and make quite the splash, that is, if you accept. Accept? Daiki blinked. Yes, as I said, I'm of mind to promote you to Chunin here and now, Sarutobi nodded, but, if you would like to hold off, I will use this Chunin exams to gauge your ability in full as a shinobi myself, and, should you show the ability required, come the end of the Chunin exams, you will skip straight past Chunin and become a Jonin. Daiki blinked. Before his eyes widened, wait, seriously, that sounded awesome. Forget toiling away after becoming a Chunin to get the requirements needed to become a Jonin, or at least qualify to be tested as one. If he did this, he would disregard all that annoyance and focus more on his grind. Or he could become a Chunin right here and now. Honestly, objectively, no matter what one he picked, he was just winning here, wasn't he? I don't have a team for the Chunin exams, he pointed out. He would have to find 2 members. That is not an issue either, the Hokage grinned lightly. I want you to make a splash after all, so if you accept, I will allow you to take part without a team if you so desire, though if you do, I can arrange for some teammates to join you. Wasn't the whole thing about the Leaf being big on teamwork and the like? Though, not that he couldn't see the Hokage's point here either. Everyone else would be in a team, so if one guy easily rushed through what took everyone else 3-man squads to do, it would make Konoha look even better and more competent. And the Hokage could pull some sneaky tactics for the exams here, specifically because the next Chunin exams were being held here in Konoha. It's too good not to accept, Daiki said finally. Let me ask something though. He added, brows furrowing. Something felt a little off. Ask away, Daiki-kun, the old man replied. There are quite a few requirements to being a Jonin, 2 of the main ones being proficient in at least 2 elements of ninjutsu and of course being strong enough for the position, Daiki listed, before adding, but Jonin are squad commanders as well, they need to be capable leaders. How will I go about proving that if I go solo? Well, the Chunin exams are more for measuring your tactical ability and general fighting ability. You can't move beyond Genin without either, and Chunins themselves lead Genin to gain experience for becoming Jonin and squad commander, the Sandaime mused. But, exceptions can be made for those that truly excel in other paths. One of our strongest Jonin, for instance, has no ability in elemental jutsu at all. Oh. He was talking about Guy. And actually, Niji never showed any elemental ninjutsu ability and he was a Jonin after the time skip as well. Beyond that, it's a chance I wish to reward you with for your efforts, the Hokage mused. Learning to lead can always come later, though a part of this does pertain to your mission to the waterfall village. Kakashi gave quite glowing report on you and your leadership during that debacle, impressing him. Daiki blinked. Leadership? He didn't really lead that time though, not much at least. He directed Sakura for sure and was the main combatant, and Sasuke had deferred to him a few times during combat, but that was it. And he didn't think Kakashi actually thought that high of him. Guess that cunt wasn't as big a prick as he liked to pretend he was. Alright, I'll accept, Daiki shrugged. He had nothing stopping him from doing so with what the older man told him. Being a Jonin meant not only could he do higher paying missions, but he also had a higher status than anyone not of the Jonin rank and meant less people could order him around, and I'll do it solo, that'll make it seem more impressive. Sarutobi nodded. Good, I'll look forward to your participation then, he replied. And then silence. Daiki expected the man to bring up, well, everything. But the man just stared at Daiki, smiling warmly at him. He trailed off for a moment before coughing. Don't you want to, bring up everything else? The Sandaime's smile didn't change, he didn't even blink. No, I think I know all I need to, he said simply. Jiraiya-kun was quite thorough in what was planned by our enemies, your part in things and what you gained from your brave actions. You don't want to ask about anything? The bijou, the Kiba blades? None of it? Daiki was utterly lost. Why didn't he want to ask? And it wasn't like he told Jiraiya the full abilities his new eyes had and the like either. Well, now that you bring it up, there is one thing I'd like to ask you. Sarutobi hummed lightly. What? Daiki blurted out and asked. The man chuckled lightly, before staring him straight in the eye. Daiki-kun, what do you think of being Hokage? The Sandaime asked. What? I'm sorry, what? Daiki gaped at the man. I think my ears might be blocked a bit or something, because it sounded like you just asked me if I wanted to be Hokage? Sarutobi chuckled. Not quite. He shook his head. I was just idly thinking to myself, you see, that your potential is not small, and I considered the possibility that you may take over for me sometime in the future. Oh, that was what meant. That made more sense. But still. Him, Hokage? He'd never even considered it before. I consider only the possibility, my boy, Sarutobi cut in before his thoughts could rapidly diverge in all different directions. Your potential is not small. With your ethic of training and talent, even without the Sanbai, I could see you reaching the level of Kakashi one day, perhaps beyond. And with the Sanbai itself backing you, you will definitely have the strength needed. Alongside that, your loyalty to the village itself cannot be called into question. You are a true bearer of the will of fire. And you think I'd be a good Hokage? Daiki asked him, disbelieving. Never mind a team, he barely had anyone that qualified as a friend. How the hell would he look after an entire shinobi village? The potential is there for sure, the Sandaime continued, smiling at him. A few years from now at most, and you will be well qualified for the seat, especially with a little help along the way. Daiki honestly didn't know how to respond to all this, to be honest. Can I get back to you? He said, awkwardly. Sarutobi chuckled. There's no rush right now, he replied gently. Take your time to think it over. I bring this up only because we have a severe lack of candidates now, but think you could step up to the plate in the near future if you so desire. Right. Daiki nodded in daze. The old man thankfully dismissed him from there, dropping no other bombs on him, and let him leave. What was that about not asking anything absurd of you? Isabu asked with a snort as soon as he left the office behind. He couldn't even bring up the desire to snipe back at the turtle Bijou. He needed to throw himself into the grind and clear his mind. He was back. Even from outside the training ground, Hinata could hear the loud sounds of training, masculine shouts, and the ground trembling slightly beneath her feet. Hinata had come around yesterday, after she was done with her mission with her team, but Daiki was nowhere to be seen. It seemed he had been on a mission. Her feet had only idly carried her here after morning training with her team. She hadn't felt like going back home to her clan compound to rest yet. Reaching behind her, Hinata nervously smoothed down her now much longer hair. She wondered, how would he react? She hadn't had the time to show him yet because of how busy she'd been with missions and training. The last she'd seen her former classmate had been over a week ago. Will he like it? She found herself wondering. The last few weeks, she'd taken his words to heart and followed his advice and felt bolder than she ever had before. Kiba and Shino had been very taken aback with her change at first. Crude and crass as his words had been, very unlike the Hyuga clan as a whole, that was nonetheless what made them stick with her. Daiki was bold and upfront. He had felt no need to mince words with her. He was utterly genuine. Shaking her head, Hinata swallowed the nervousness building up inside her and forced herself to boldly make her way into the training ground. As she did, she was just in time to see Daiki shooting forward, spinning and lashing out with a knee strike that shattered straight through a large rock wall about 20 feet high and half a foot thick. Still needs work, he muttered to himself, before turning and looking at her, and it was then she noted a few changes that he had gone through since she last saw him. He was wearing something akin to an armored pauldron on one of his shoulders, but, shaped like some odd face, was it some form of animal? But what stood out more was that his eyes, a light brown, were now a bright crimson red. He blinked, looking at her oddly, before grinning, newly crimson eyes looking her up and down. Look who finally took my advice, he noted. No idea how you grew your hair out so quickly, but you are looking real good now, Hinata. Definitely working that 9 out of 10, he voiced appreciatively. It took considerable effort on her part to stop her cheeks from burning red and ducking away from his gaze. Thank you, Hinata replied, before giving a small cough. Daiki-kun, can I ask what happened to your eyes? Oh, these? He jerked a thumb up to point at his eyes. Nothing much, got into a fight with some missing ninja the other day. one of them had these, a pretty sweet Jujutsu, so when I killed them, I took the eyes myself and implanted them using my mystical palm jutsu. Hinata stared. She wasn't sure how she should process that. It was very morbid and horrifying to a degree that he would just replace his eyes with a dead man's. But at the same time, she had to admire the sheer pragmatism and decisiveness that would be needed for such an action. It did hit a little close to home though, what with the reason why the branch family of the Hyuga had to be given the caged bird seal. She decided to put it out of mind. "Are you busy, Daiki-kun?" she asked, moving on. "I was hoping to do some training with you." "I'm fine with it, you're the perfect person to test these new eyes of mine out with anyway." Daiki grinned and readily accepted, though, "Don't go thinking that just because you're a total solid 9 now, that I'll go easy on you." She didn't expect him to, she knew well enough, that was not what he was about, but still, his words did make her chest warm with pride and a smile quirk up over her lips. "What if I was a 10? Hinata challenged, activating her Byakugan, feeling her heart flutter as she did, and unzipping her new lavender and white jacket, exposing her torso underneath and wrapped it around her waist. Daiki had paid very special attention to her backside and her chest since he started helping her, and so had she. She'd changed up her mesh armor for a slightly more sheer and breathable version, which would have left her breasts very much bare and easy to see through the mesh links, if not for the small black half corset she'd added as well. It hid her large breasts, yet at the same time pushed up her cleavage quite abundantly. Daiki just stared at her for a moment, before grinning, eyes feasting on her cleavage and giving her a wolf whistle. "Well, now you're just making me jealous of Naruto," he shamelessly admitted. Her smile spread so wide across her cheeks it almost hurt. In spite of the happiness his words inspired in Hinata, she decided to move first, knowing that she was the one at the disadvantage. Hinata dashed forward towards the boy, thrusting a palm out towards his lower left stomach with her right hand. She expected him to block with his outer forearm, catching her in the junction to leave her wide open for a counter, and planned for it. But the taller boy stepped back a single step, easily avoiding her, but didn't counter himself. That was fine. She followed through, swinging her left palm out, aiming for his right shoulder. But his arm shot out, catching her wrist and stopping her in its tracks, before she even fully committed. "What?" Hinata's eyes widened. Thinking quickly, she lashed out with a sweep at his legs. He jumped as expected, but did not let go of her arm as she wanted in the process. With her free hand, while he was in the air, she quickly took advantage to lash out at his stomach. Or, that was what she attempted at least. Just as her muscles tensed, his knee shot out and caught her in the cheek, letting go of her hand at the same time. Pain flared in her cheek and the force of the blow sent Hinata blasting backwards. She grinded her feet across the ground, bleeding off the momentum, and rubbed her cheek. Daiki didn't pursue her, instead as he landed, he was grinning at her, wiggling his eyebrows as if to tell her come at me. That, something was off about how he countered her there. Daiki was fast for sure, but that wasn't just speed. Ignoring the pain in her cheek, Hinata spread one leg back behind her, before pushing off of it and launching back towards Daiki. This time, she went for a full-out offense. She wasn't even close to mastering the 8 trigrams 64 palms, but individual tenketsu were well within her ability to close one by one. Chakra surging from 2 fingertips atop each hand, Hinata launched into a flurry of blows, aiming for his lower body. With his more muscular build, it was the hardest place for him to defend. Yet, with each strike, speeding, blurring strikes, she could barely keep track of herself. She came up short. Daiki backpedaled, dodged, and deflected each and every strike. The most she managed was a few glancing blows that never even came close to his tenketsu. This. Hinata didn't know what to think. But she wasn't about to give up, she just had to. Daiki caught her wrist on her next strike. Apparently he was done just avoiding her blows. She tried to break his grip and jump back, but he was much too strong for that, and instead, with a jerk of his own wrist, pulled her bodily through the air towards him, a rising knee aiming for her stomach. 2 options flared instantly in her mind: defend or attack. She attacked. She thrust out with her other hand, meeting the knee, 2 fingers hitting the tenketsu in his knee. She heard bone crunch. Agony flared through her fingers as the knee continued on, breaking her fingers on impact, before gagging as it slammed into her stomach. Hinata was launched backwards through the air and slammed into a large tree. The blow winded her twice over, making it hard to breathe, and the tree snapped from how hard she slammed into it and tumbled to the ground. For a second, she lay there against the snapped tree trunk, slumped over it in a daze, trying to regain her ability to breathe. She shook herself from it quickly, ignoring the pain in her fingers and stomach. Hinata jabbed the pressure points over her airways, opening them up and allowing her to suck in more breath. She gasped in great big lungfuls of air and looked blearily at Daiki. He was rubbing at his knee where she cut off the flow of his chakra, and eyeing it with interest. The way he was staring at his knee though. It was almost as if. So that's how the gentle fist works, I see. Daiki's eyes widened in some apparent realization, and her eyes widened as a rushing, salmon-colored chakra seemed to rush from a point in his chest, spreading through his body briefly before disappearing entirely, almost as if it was never there. And suddenly, his chakra was flowing through the tenketsu on his knee once again. What? What was going on? Hinata had never heard of anything like that before. And the only way she knew for a tenketsu to be unlocked was if another practitioner of the gentle fist undone the block or wait for the block to fade away naturally. Can you see the tenketsu? Hinata couldn't help but gasp out, even as she tried to get her breathing back under control. Pretty much, yeah, Daiki directed his grin at her. These eyes can do a lot of things, some of that includes everything those pretty little eyes of yours can, well except that 360-degree vision. His eyes, they were like the Byakugan? These eyes can do a lot of things, some of that includes dash. Hinata's eyes widened, a light bulb of realization occurring for her as well. You were predicting my attacks as well. She'd sparred with Daiki a few times. She knew he was incredibly fast and incredibly strong, but it was different today. If it was someone who wasn't used to fighting him, they would probably miss it entirely, but not her. That too, a bit like the Sharingan actually. The only thing these eyes don't do in that aspect is slow down my perception and let me auto-copy shit, he revealed with a shrug, before a massive smirk spread across his face. Honestly, I've never heard of a Dojutsu like this before, so I was thinking, maybe these eyes are a result of an Uchiha and one of your clanmates getting it on. That. Hinata trailed off. She wasn't sure if that would have those kind of results. But then, she'd seen the family records and never seen an Uchiha that married into the family before, so she couldn't actually say anything on that part. She shook her head and pushed herself up off of the tree. Her stomach protested the action, but she ignored it. None of this actually mattered right now while they were sparring. Taking advantage of his distraction, Hinata kicked off the tree and lunged at Daiki as far as she could, a palm strike aimed at his shoulder. As she expected, he easily avoided the blow and let her shoot right past him. Pushing chakra out of her feet, she stuck herself to the ground before pushing off, spinning around entirely and lashing out with a spinning kick, while she quickly reached for her equipment pouch with her other hand, ignoring the pain from her broken fingers and snatching a smoke bomb out. Daiki caught her kick in his palm, gripping tightly around her ankle, and a split second later, Hinata was bodily picked up and her vision blurred as Daiki spun around with her in his grip. It was astounding how strong he was, that he could so easily just grab her and toss her around with one hand as if she weighed little more than a feather. It was a good thing, she expected this. She flicked her hand, smashing the smoke bomb beneath them, a thick cloud of smoke bursting up around them, and then she was airborne as Daiki let go, tossing her. Then, she once again ignored the pain in her fingers to quickly make the hand seals for the replacement jutsu, a log taking her place, soaring through the air, and she shifted her gaze, before bursting back towards the smoke cloud with Daiki inside. This should cut off his prediction ability a bit, I hope, she thought. Few people knew that the Byakugan could be selective in what it saw through. It could be used to see through practically anything, but could be used to not see through everything at the same time. If they couldn't do that after all, when used, the sensory output they had would be very confusing. They wouldn't be able to even see themselves standing on solid ground. So if his new eyes were like the Byakugan, he would have to actively shift his vision type to see her. He would actively have to either see through the smoke itself, or see her chakra to catch sight of her. It was a small, tiny weakness, but a weakness nonetheless. An hour later, Hinata found herself slumped down, leaning forward. She was soaked right through with sweat, and her body felt like one massive bruise. She was utterly exhausted and could barely move a muscle. "You done much better today," Daiki praised her, stretching out his arms in front of her. Despite his praise, and his clothing being ruffled a bit and ripped in some parts, He looked completely fine and not exhausted at all, and that's saying a lot considering how much stronger I've got since we last sparred and my new upgrades. She managed a faint smile at his praise. It's thanks to you, Hinata admitted. I wouldn't have improved this much if you didn't help me out before. She was ever so grateful he had taken the time to do so. She was almost astounded at her own progress. She actually managed to land a few hits on him, even with his new eyes. And since then, she'd won much more spars against Kiba and Shino, and her losses to them were getting more rare as the days went on. You've not improved that much, Daiki shook his head, refuting her words. You've always been this skilled more or less. No, I've not, Hinata refuted back, frowning lightly. That didn't make sense. I wouldn't be doing this much better if I was Dash. It's not that, Daiki cut her off and sat down beside her. You are getting better, no doubt about it, babe, but you've never been weak like you think you were. You're just applying what you've got better now that you have the confidence to do so. What do you mean? Hinata's brows furrowed. That didn't seem like it would make that big a difference. Daiki shrugged. Honestly, it's like, no amount of training will make you strong if you don't believe you can be strong. You need to believe you can actually do it. You just set yourself up for failure by letting your own doubts weigh you down, he explained, before waving his hand at her. It's like your new look. My look? Hinata tilted her head. She was beginning to get a general gist of what he meant there, before he suddenly changed topics. Yeah, like, despite how hot you are, you were hiding away and shy about yourself, didn't believe in your own looks, he continued, then his eyes raked over her body and she found herself almost instinctively pressing her chest out. See, like that. Now that you know how absurdly attractive you are and how dynamite your body is, you're not shying away and stepping right in. It's the same in a fight. If you don't believe in your ability to win, you shy away, flinch more, give up without giving your all. Because you're not doing that anymore, you feel like you've grown massively, when really you've been strong all along. So it was like that? It was the exact same. She hadn't gotten more beautiful, she was just not hiding anymore because she didn't feel the need to now that she knew. So in the end, it really did all just come down to believing in herself and her worth. She felt suddenly, as if a weight was lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized had been there. Despite her progress, she'd regretted it, how much time she'd wasted being weak. But as it turned out, she'd never wasted her time at all. Her efforts actually meant something in the end. Anyway, enough about that, Daiki said, before suddenly grasping her by the shoulders and bodily turning her around, a yelp of surprise leaving her throat from the bold move. Let me fix you up a bit, especially those fingers. The boy reached out and gently grasped her hand, before lifting it up and making a single hand seal, green chakra flaring to life around his hands and being directed into her hand, focused around her fingers. It was warm, and the pain began to numb away almost instantly. It was funny in a way, that someone like Daiki, who was so headstrong and bold, knew something as delicate as medical ninjutsu. She then noticed where his eyes were directed and a small smile spread across her lips in amusement, her cheeks warming ever so slightly. Did you need to turn me around like this? Hinata asked. She was curious if he would try to hide it. Nope, he shrugged, not looking away from her chest. I just wanted to have a look at your cleavage. None of the other girls in our class come close to having tits like these. Might not be for me in the end, but I can admire my own handiwork. Right? As always, he was so very upfront. I don't mind. Hinata admitted, and she didn't at all. She actually quite liked his attention. Shallow it might have been, but Daiki was a strong, handsome boy himself. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Naruto World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Just a quick reminder, there's only one more part left in the story. What if Ichigo had a different Zanpakuto before we catch up with the author? So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be here on the channel. I'm currently considering these 3 fanfics. What if Seinen system in High School DxD? What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if Mangaka in One Piece world? Let me know which one you'd like to see next by voting in the poll. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.